Good evening. I would like to welcome everybody to City Council tonight. We have a full agenda and a full house. We thank you for being here tonight. We'll start off with a roll call, please.
Councilmember Dennehy. He's here. Councilmember Schmischer.
Here.
Councilmember B. Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Stein.
Here.
Councilmember Tracy.
Here.
Councilmember Worthington.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hemrick.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here. Do we have Bradley Buck here? All right, looks like our invocation is not here tonight, but we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any requests to speak to council on anything that is not on the agenda tonight? Are there any announcements from city council members? Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to mention that the Lincoln Park Cotter Superfund Site Community Advisory Group meeting is going to be the last week of November instead of the third Tuesday due to Thanksgiving week. So we'll be meeting as usual on that last Tuesday, 3 p.m. at in person at PCC Fremont campus and also on Zoom. And generally, we do not have a community advisory group meeting in December. That's all.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to report out that we had the first meeting of the Red Canyon Trails Committee last week. Went well. The city has already kind of mapped out what a very minimal trail might look like and what some of the amenities that we might need to have there were we to add about a 3.1 mile trail to Red Canyon. So it's really exciting. We're actually hoping that we might be able to bring that plan to council by January. We would look to do a public meeting in December to make sure that the public has plenty of time to provide input and thoughts on that conceptual drawing, but they're looking for a pretty rapid rollout to ensure that they can get started in that sweet spot of late winter, early spring before it gets too hot to work on the trail building. So just wanted to let you know that that is off and running. Thanks.
Awesome. Mayor Pro Tem Hemrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do have a general government meeting this Wednesday at 6 p.m. We're going to be talking about the UTV ordinance because it does have a sunset provision in it, and so we're going to establish the direction we're going there, and we're going to be talking about the use tax ordinance. In addition, I'd like to, the emergency services are dispatched through our combined regional communication authority. That's an authority comprised and governed by an intergovernmental agreement between Fremont County, Canyon City, Florence, and the various fire districts and emergency medical providers in the county. But behind them is the E911 board. The E911 board actually collects the taxes that we all see on our cell phones every month and provides those. There's a certain statutory requirements that they provide funds to the regional communications center so that emergency calls are received by the center and can be acted on by the appropriate agencies. But the 911 board that we have in this county, actually it's two counties now because we also have Custer County as a party to our intergovernmental agreement, is stepping up to the plate. The E911 board has access to funds. They're providing those funds to the operations center, both for salaries and equipment, capital equipment, and other expenses that the center faces. And now the largest will be in this next year, 2024, the largest contributor out of all of the entities that contribute to the monies for that center. And I just wanted to pass that on. It's something that we don't think about or see sometimes what happens behind the scenes when we make a 911 call. But there's a lot of people dedicated to making sure that when the call is made, that someone receives the call and that the appropriate personnel and agencies are dispatched to help citizens in their need. Thank you.
All right, if there are no more announcements, I will turn the time over to our Administrator Ryan Stevens to go over our consent agenda, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Item 7A is to approve the minutes for the regular city council meeting on October 16th. The special city council meeting on October 16th, which was an executive session, October 18th, which was a budget hearing, and October 25th, which was the water committee. 7B authorizes the city administrator to sign a State of Colorado intergovernmental agreement for the US 50 pedestrian project maintenance. 7C awards bid 5923 Water Master Plan to JVA in an amount not to exceed $284,600. 7D awards bid 6323 US 50 pedestrian improvement project, project number 20574 to Pyramid Construction in an amount not to exceed $3,994,318. 7E awards bid 6723 audit services to DMC Auditing and Consulting LLC in an amount not to exceed $92,996. 7F awards bid 6923 Police Department bid approval for patrol rifles to Adamson Police Products in an amount not to exceed $13,710. 7G awards bid 7023 sole source bulk salts to Tri-State Commodities in an amount not to exceed $2,714. 7H approve the short list of on-call engineering services. 7I is to authorize bicycle disposition, and 7J is to receive and file cash disbursements.
We do have citizens who would like to speak on items D and H, but I guess we need to approve the consent agenda first, though, don't we?
Yeah, I would pull those off if you want to hear public comment on those.
To hear public comment?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you have any questions about any other item besides D and H, now would be the time to ask those, and then we'll have a motion to approve the consent agenda with an amendment to move D and H to the regular agenda. Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City Administrator Stevens, could you give us a little bit more of an explanation of what efforts are made with regard to the bicycles in terms of public awareness, so that if they do belong to certain individuals, they are able to retrieve them? Thank you.
Sure. We actually have Commander Tim Walsh in the audience. I'll ask Tim to come up and talk about the process the police department goes through to inform people of those found items.
So, Councilmember Schmischer, what the police department does is we review our records for any reports of stolen bikes that match the description of bicycles that we may have found in a given time frame. We have also instituted a new procedure that we announce anything that we think might be identifiable on our website and also post it on the city's Crime Watch page. However, that policy and procedure was not in place with respect to the bicycles that are on the consent agenda today. I spoke to our evidence and property manager earlier today on this question and was told that the bicycles that we have for disposition on this go-around also do not include anything that we would consider to be of significant value. They're frankly mostly junk.
I guess I'm a bit confused because I understand that we're asking to keep 2 of them for detective use, so I wouldn't consider them to all be junk.
And to be clear, they're not all junk. They're just not of significant value. The ones that are being requested for retention for detective use are ones that they can use and not be conspicuous while they're riding around, so they're not super flashy, high-value bikes. They're something that if a detective were to ride up to a scene and leave laying on the ground wouldn't attract particular attention.
Thank you. And your thought moving forward is that these in the future would be advertised, or not advertised, but would be noticed on kind of public-facing Facebook group or Crime Watchers, so that if folks didn't report it missing, but it did belong to them, they had the opportunity to claim it, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would it be feasible to go ahead and do that with these bikes before disposing of them, so that folks do have that opportunity if they do belong to them?
Most likely, if council wanted us to delay these, or this round of dispositions in order to do that, we probably could do that without too much trouble.
Great. And that you don't have too much clogging up the storage room or anything like that? It's getting
Bicycle
there.
dispositions, are, they're a bulky item, but, it's something where if we were to say we're going to put this out and then bring this back to council in a month or something like that, it's not the end of the world.
Okay. I think that would be great, just so that folks have every opportunity to potentially claim their property. Bikes, even though they may not be worth a lot of money in terms of the mountain biking scene, certainly individuals' bikes that they use to get around can be invaluable when it comes to transportation needs. So I would appreciate that.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
Anything else from council on any other items on the agenda? Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the, just like to point out on the authorizing the city administrator to sign a State of Colorado intergovernmental agreement for the Highway 50 pedestrian project, that one of the things that we have to do as a city is to certify under penalty of perjury that we have not and will not disclose any personal identifying information for the purpose of investigating, participating, cooperating, or assisting federal immigration enforcement. And I just find it personally outrageous that the state makes receipt of highway funds contingent on us participating in being a sanctuary state. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion? Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have additional questions on 7B and 7C.
Okay.
On 7B, with regard to the intergovernmental agreement, this also includes the city taking on responsibility for the maintenance of all of this. So I just wanted to get an estimate of to what our annual maintenance cost would be.
Sure. And I'll call Public Works Director Leo Evans up to talk about that.
Good evening. All right, I had some notes on this. I got to find them quick. All right. We did look through all of this with our Parks Department, who will be the team that's most directly going to be responsible for a lot of the maintenance out there. We did not assign a dollar value to it directly, but we did identify a number of tasks that would be involved in this. We estimate roughly 1 to 2 hours a week will be spent during most of the year, making a sweep for trash, picking up any loose debris that gets blown in there, anything that gets knocked over. We'll have a number of annual recurring costs. A lot of the medians will be irrigated. They are all drip irrigated, so they're as efficient as they can be. It's not turf drip irrigations to individual plantings, so there's some water costs there. Along with that comes annual costs to replace any landscaping that dies, replace the mulch, the rock mulch, anything like that that gets disturbed throughout the year, blow out the irrigation. We're kind of thinking that's going to be around a week's worth of work annually when you take into effect the startup, shutdown of irrigation, landscape plantings, touching things up in the spring so they look good throughout the summer, and then kind of winterizing them in the winter. Like I said, we didn't put in a set dollar amount to it. I would estimate there's certainly a few $1,000s worth of labor costs in there, and probably a few $1,000s worth of material costs in there to replace some of the landscaping and, just the mulch and things like that wear out over time.
Thank you. So your estimate would be less than $10,000 annually?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then my question on 7C was just related to the Water Committee's involvement in the RFP. I believe you mentioned that it was briefly discussed in the Water Committee meeting, but given that it's the Water Master Plan, I would love to have just a little bit more detail as to how the Water Committee was involved in the RFP drafting and in the selection.
So the determination was kind of made, since it was a more technical document, that it wasn't really an appropriate spot for the Water Committee to talk too much about. We briefly went over the scope of work in one committee meeting, but that was about the end of it.
So did they have input into what would be covered, and were kind of their thoughts as to what topics need to be included in the Water Master Plan baked into the RFP?
No, not really.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm a little disappointed. I had thought that this would be one of the main issues that the Water Committee would be providing input into, given that it is our Water Master Plan and kind of our way moving forward. I'm not sure, Mayor Pro Tem, as the chair of that committee, if you have additional thoughts as to the committee's role, both in the lead up and kind of serving as a technical advisor moving forward.
So I think it was expressed by our water system administrator, if that's a promotion.
Sure.
Travis Payne, but we decided, I think, as a committee that trying to sit down and help write the technical document was probably outside of our purview. We did have discussions about future input where we would have input into the Water Master Plan, and I think that's where the committee landed, is that's the appropriate place there to, talk about it during development as we're going through the process.
Okay, thank you.
So
I
it was
appreciate that
A
clarification.
decision made by the committee, and really, I think when we appoint these committees, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have their eye and finger on absolutely every tiny little thing to do. That there's a responsibilities for staff and for council that ultimately it's up to us to make some decisions. Councilmember Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ahead of the meeting, I had asked some questions about several of these consent agenda items also, including this one, and asked questions as to whether there's a way to incorporate the Water Committee in more of the review phases of this work. And I'm not suggesting that we have to change any wording anywhere, but I know there's some really great expertise on that committee, and so any way that they can be used to help with reviewing work as this occurs on the water plan, I think that would be great.
Yeah, they will be in at least one of the technical advisory committee meetings. There's 3 that's in the contract, and they'll be in at least one. We didn't want to have them in on all 3 because there is some sensitive information that's going to be discussed, and it really should be kept within the city confines.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions from council at this time? We could take a motion. Remember, we do need to move items D and H to the regular agenda.
Madam Mayor and Council, I move to approve the consent agenda as written, moving letters D and H to 9A. What should I move them to?
No, so we'll put them first thing right after 9, so it'll go
Right after
9 DHA.
Okay.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Smisher?
Aye.
D. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
All right, we will move on with our agenda. Thank you. An administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. You have the written report. I'm happy to take any questions. A couple of items that are not in the written report. The leaf pickup program starts next week. That starts next Monday. So there's a schedule out. We have that out on social media and various other formats for the public to see. And then a reminder that city buildings will be closed on the 10th in observance of Veterans Day.
Any questions for Ryan at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9D, and that's to award bid 6323 US 50 pedestrian improvement projects to Pyramid Construction Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $3,994,318. Go ahead and invite Leo if you want to go ahead and come up to help talk to council about this project. First of all, almost all of this money is coming from the state of Colorado. Is that correct, Ryan? It's from CDOT. This is not general fund from the
The
city.
majority of it is from CDOT through, actually the feds through CDOT. There are various sources of money. Some have matching requirements, some don't, but the city match is fairly small on this project.
Right, so this is primarily a CDOT-funded project, but they want to cooperate with the city, and so we worked with them. When I came here 8 years ago, this conversation had already been started well in advance of this, so it's been well over an 8-year project of having an official public committee to help make decisions on what would be the best way to get pedestrians safely across Highway 50 in areas that are highly trafficked by pedestrians. There have been multiple public hearings. Staff have gone door to door to every single business that would be affected by this. Certified mail has been mailed out, and there have been several sit-downs, one-on-one meetings with those who had concerns, just to put some historic context behind this. But Leo, if you can expand a little bit more about, 8 years, probably, I don't know, 10 years, I don't know how long it's been a long time, and we are finally, government is so freaking slow, plus a pandemic. But we're finally at the end of the clock where we're actually going to go into implementation. And I think there are going to be a lot of questions because it has been long and a slow process. The pandemic put it on pause, and we might need some refreshers on what's going on and why.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. The project has been going on at least since 2015, maybe before that, long before I've been here. It's been something I've worked on the entire 10 months I've been here, and we're happy to bring this to you. This is the second time we bid this project. The first time we bid it, we did not receive any bids that were in compliance with the bid documents, and given all of the federal and state requirements, we were not able to bring a recommendation forward, so we rebid the project. What you have today is a recommendation for Pyramid Contracting as the low bid. We currently have around $3.2 million available through CDOT for the construction phase of this project, with an amendment pending that will add, I think it's around another $800,000, pushing it just north of around $4 million in total for the construction phase of this project. So with that, we do potentially have enough to build the entirety of the project, which spans from 1st to 15th Street, still with enough contingency and all the other monies to do everything else associated with that work. So if this is awarded tonight, what that would look like is we would go back to CDOT, get our final approvals to begin construction. We would probably begin construction late November, early December. The lane closure restrictions on Highway 50 changed dramatically after Memorial Day, So the intention would be that the work is done prior to Memorial Day. And in fact, the low bidder has a project, I believe at the Pueblo Airport, that requires almost all their resources, that starts on April 28th or 29th. So their intention is to be done ahead of that time, which would coincide nicely with Blossom Fest, but I don't want to count those chickens too early. We know how those things can go in construction. So this project would build 6 pedestrian median crossings of US 50, 4 of them located between 1st and 9th Street, 1 between 9th and 11th Street, and then 1 more between 12th and 15th Street, and I'd have to get my map out to recall exactly where those are. All those islands are landscaped, irrigated, planted. The crossings will be similar to what you have on US 50 in Salida with the rapid rectangular flashing beacon signs. It's a yellow pedestrian sign with lights that blink up when a pedestrian activates it and pushes a button and wants to cross. Yeah, and like you said, I think it's been a very long time in the works. Like certainly been in the works far longer than I've been here. Since I've been here, we presented an update on it, I want to say, in April at maybe a vision or a general government meeting. We had a open house in August where we answered a lot of questions and presented on the project. And those are the two big things that we've done in my time here. But like you said, I know there was a lot of meetings with stakeholders and property owners up and down the corridor prior to that time that got us to this point.
So I do have a question, Leo, is that even though, I mean, we have had so many, we had the public committee, we've had public hearings, we've done, the letters, the certified mail, the door-to-door, public engagement. But when it's finally going to happen, this is going to be a really big change for our community to have these mini medians, and it's going to be, change is really hard. Is there a strategy to help with some education and to help make it as painless as possible for our folks that are going to be traveling in Highway 50 and having to embrace this new features that we're having? Yeah,
we'll certainly utilize all our normal resources and social media, print media in town to try to get the word out. A lot of it will be, like you said, you're so acclimated to doing things the way you've always done them your whole life, and now that's going to change I can't turn left here, I can't do what I've always done before. And, we want people to come to us when that happens. We're happy to explain the reasoning why that is the way that is, how we came to that decision, try to inform the public as best we can about why those changes are being made and what the benefits are from those changes that kind of go along with maybe the inconvenience and having to relearn things that, are so ingrained in everybody's normal way of life. But yes, I'm certainly available to answer any questions, meet with anyone one-on-one. I know we met with a couple owners, I'm trying to think of their names, but over on 10th Street related to some of the changes there just a couple weeks ago to talk about that. So we're still doing our best to try to get out there and be available and answer all the questions we can.
Thank you. Councilmember Tracy?
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and I think I may have expressed this before. My primary concern, I look forward to this. I think it's really going to be helpful to have these crossings for pedestrians, but I think the safety issues cannot be overstated. I really think we're going to have to continue to think through how to do whatever we can to make sure that we address pedestrian safety. I think about places that I've seen where they have these kinds of crossings and pedestrian lights that pedestrians can activate. And where I've seen them, even in places where there's only one lane of traffic each way and where the speed limit maybe is 25, I still see risks to pedestrians. Here we have a U.S. highway with a huge amount of traffic. A lot of it is semi-traffics, RV, a lot of truck traffic. People who don't do the speed limit, which is 30 through there. And 30's pretty speedy for an area where you're going to mix in pedestrians. And I'm just giving my opinion. I'm not an engineer, certainly not a traffic engineer. But I just want us to be very cognizant that this is going to be tough to address safety issues, and we just have to keep that in mind.
And we do have a citizen's request to speak to council, so that's okay. I'd like to call Mike Storica up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council, and staff. First off, Madam Mayor, I take exception to your statement that this was CDOT money. That's all of our tax money, whether it comes from the state, the feds, local, county, it's all our tax money.
Yes, it is.
I'm here to urge you to reject the bid on this project and to kill it. The US 50 pedestrian access plan will not do anything but hurt businesses along Highway 50. I attended the 3 meetings that were presented a year and a half ago or so. There was nobody there that I talked to that was in favor of any of it. The reason explained for the construction and the plan are flawed, and I'll present the data, or the data presented for that was flawed. Number one was safety. The numbers show that most of the accidents were at controlled intersections, and none at mid-block left-hand turns. I've been in the business at 1217 Royal Gorge Boulevard for over 20 years. I've never seen an accident in the middle of that block. Number 2 is to slow down traffic. If you want to slow down traffic, reinstate the traffic division of the Canyon City Police Department and have them out there writing tickets. The revenue generated, those written into municipal court, will pay for those officers' salaries and put money into city coffers that can be used for something more useful. Number 3, direct traffic to downtown Main Street. It will not accomplish this. It eliminates several left-hand turn lanes that lead to Main Street. 8th and Main is one of the intersections that there is no left-hand turn either direction, whether you're going east or west. There's several others that directly affect businesses. And speaking of Main Street, I, along with many other business owners not on Main Street, are tired of hearing how much more money can we spend on Main Street. Nobody from City Hall has come to me and said, how can I help you? I did not receive registered letters. I got emails and postcards of the 3 meetings before. I have not been contacted in any other shape or form. From City Hall, City Council, nobody. Lastly, and probably the most important, is what I read is close to $500,000 that comes from our local coffers. This money can be spent many other ways. Our roads stink. Our police department is lacking personnel, and we have a serious homelessness problem. $500,000 could build one heck of a nice shelter for these people. Not to say that I'm in favor of that, and I could see these intersections, the mid-block walking, I have no idea who designed and put those intersections, those walkways where they're at. They go along property lines, they go through dirt parking lots, the property lines put people into an alleyway from no parking area that they want to get to Main Street across Highway 50. I can see them being used right now by the homeless people more than anybody else. And that's the people I see crossing mid-block right now. Thank you for your time. I'm glad I was able to talk tonight, and please reject and kill this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Council, would you like to have any further discussion on this project? Councilmember Schmischer.
I was wondering if it's okay, Mr. Sturika, I had a couple of questions. I was particularly disconcerted when you mentioned that you haven't received any registered mail and that you haven't been contacted by City Hall in any way. I was wondering if we could get a better understanding of when those registered letters went out, just so that we could confirm, because I believe it was well before I was on council.
It was before COVID.
So that it happened a long time ago.
Definitely could have happened and maybe not be in your memory.
It might have been more than a year and a half ago. I know there was 3 public meetings that were held here in this building. I received a postcard, I think, on one, saw or information on social media or newspaper on the other 2, but never by certified letter.
This was when, I have distinct memories, this is when Jim Meisner was on this council, and he absolutely demanded that those certified letters were sent and that folks went door to door, and he made sure that it happened.
It didn't happen at my
distinctly
business. I was
remember.
never contacted, never received a certified letter.
We've gone door to door multiple times.
I don't know. I wasn't contacted. Several other people, businesses along Highway 50 are here tonight, and they say they haven't been contacted either.
Sorry, I want to make sure I fully understand. When we say that we went door to door, did we ensure that we spoke to somebody at each of those businesses, or was there just an attempt to?
Did you speak to the owner? Did you maybe speak to an employee? That would be my question.
So I would just love a little bit more clarification.
That was
on the
before
effort.
Leo's time?
Sure.
That was before probably even Ryan's time. Over that. That was previous administration. I don't have the details. I don't know what the records, if there's any records that were kept that you could go through files and see, but I know we've had many conversations, absolutely demanding that this happen, and had people report back to us. And from those door-to-door contacts and certified mail is where it generated those one-on-one meetings where we sat down and went over their issues, and changes were made to the plans to accommodate those business owners who had concerns. So this plan has seen many different phases in order to accommodate as best we can the best plan that we can do that's a win-win for the business owners and for the highway safety pedestrian crossings. An extra bonus is that vision to connect the river to downtown as well. It's there's many factors that come into this. It's also a natural traffic calming opportunity. There's a whole list of benefits. It's been a long time, so my memory is a little bit different. I imagine maybe some of your memories are a little bit different too. You're welcome to come speak to us and address council as well if you have specific concerns. Leo is right here. He can set up a one-on-one meeting with you as well to talk through those, and so we can do the best we can to accommodate your needs.
And Leo can come up and talk about this, but typically when we go door to door, there's a leave behind as well. So if they can't talk with somebody, there's something they leave behind. Is that correct, Leo?
Yeah, I wasn't here for these ones, obviously, but typically when we do door-to-door, for any other construction project of we're placing curb today and you won't be able to use your drive, we leave a door hanger on a door, call us, ask a question, follow up if we didn't happen to make contact with somebody.
Would it be possible also to address some of the concerns that Mr. Storica has raised with regard to the placement of the mid-block pedestrian crossings and some of the concerns with lack of turning onto Main Street and potential, I think that there were some valid concerns that have been raised, so I think it would be really helpful to hear kind of what thought went into the design and what the city thinks about those concerns. Thank you.
I can meet with Mr. Storica after this and get down to those specific concerns. I know the plan that's brought forward, fully adopted the west access plan wherever it could. A lot of those restrictions and changes to the traffic patterns were vetted through CDOT and the committee that was in place at the time. So there's been a lot of work to get to the point those are at now, but I'm certainly willing to look at them again and see if there isn't a need for change or a need for revision, and if there is a path for that to happen. There has been some recent revisions, maybe just before I started here with CDOT. I think, want to say 10th Street had a late change to the west access plan that we worked through with CDOT, so there is certainly a process to do that.
There's been more than that. There's also the potential median that was by Loaf and Jug that had changes as well. That was eliminated.
That's the
you're
one.
correct.
So that one
nice.
was also eliminated. And then there's many changes that were made before that. The original plan was to have these ginormous medians, and we're like, no way, that's not going to happen. And the committee changed that. Those public meetings, we had lots of change, and we worked so hard to make sure everybody was contacted. It has been a long time, though, and so that's where I'm afraid is that longevity of time is where it's been kind of that disconnect of memory and those conversations that were had.
Yeah, a lot of the design came from the pedestrian crossing work group that, I think that was definitely before Leo's time. It's actually before my time, but there was actually a group that got together and worked through with the consultants on where the best places for those crossings should be. And, those mid-block crossings were one of those things that came out of that process.
That's where the most of the jaywalking was happening.
Yeah.
And it's not, I would say a lot of the jaywalking, it's been a while, but it was like the Big Daddy's Diner, the liquor store. There's several different certain spots where there's definitely some hot spots of the jaywalking that happens from people who are utilizing those businesses. But Leo, if you could please get Mike Storica's information as well as these gentlemen over here from Champion too, so we can have some one-on-one sit-downs with them. I'm sure that they would appreciate that greatly.
Certainly.
Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm still stuck on safety, and I'm not opposed to this project. I just want to be sure that we design it in conjunction with CDOT and whoever else in a way that maximizes safety for pedestrians in any way that we can. So I have questions about the speed limit on this area, the 1st to 15th Street stretch of Highway 50. Is there any way, and I assume that this is a CDOT issue more than ours, but is there any way that that speed limit could be reduced to 25 instead of 30 miles an hour? And then I also have another speed limit question to follow up on that.
I would have to check. I believe it would be a CDOT function, and typically a change in a speed limit requires an engineering study to support that. You can't arbitrarily set a speed limit, too low and then over-enforce it, things like that. So you have to have it backed up with data. But yeah, I think they would be the ones to really lead that effort if that was something we wanted to consider and explore.
I would hope that we would at least have that conversation with them. And then also, or if for some reason we can't do that, maybe another thing we could do is get the speed limits reduced at both ends of this project, farther away from the 1st to 15th part of Highway 50. Coming from the west, the trucks come flying down the hill, and maybe if they're lucky, they make the curve. They're supposed to be doing 45 long before they get there, and many people don't slow down enough at all already. And then as we get into town after the curve, coming eastbound, the speed limit goes from 45 down to 35, then 30. And I'm just wondering if we can somehow make that slowdown occur sooner, like right at the bottom of the hill or whatever, and get people slowed down. And same at the other end, coming westbound from that east side of Canyon City, it goes from 45 to, I think, 35, then 30. Mm-hmm. And if those margins just could be moved out at both ends, that might help, because I don't know who patrols for speeding through there. I almost never see anybody stopped all the way through on Highway 50. And you see all kinds. You see people, trucks or cars, whoever, who are going 10 to 15 or more over the speed limit. You also see people doing that amount under the speed limit. I'm just very concerned about, we're going to build something to encourage pedestrians to cross the highway, which I'm all in favor of for all kinds of reasons, but I don't want to have disasters happen as a result. So just want to throw those
I
out.
think one of the benefits, though, is that it's also a natural traffic calmer as well, too.
It should be, but it's a 4-lane highway, and that makes it different from some of these other areas
I think
where.
Mayor
So
Pro Tem had something to
I
add.
may be able to shed a little bit of light on this. We had a similar discussion about speed limits on Main Street with our previous engineer. And if I remember correctly, it takes an engineering study to determine what the average speed limits are now, and that based on that study, if there is a reason, I believe, issued a warrant to lower that speed limit by CDOT. But it's a result of an engineering study. I think there's lots of factors that go into it, but it's not arbitrary. It's based on conditions as they are. And so you don't arbitrarily get to say, we would like to see the speed limit knocked down 5 miles an hour or something like that. It's actually based on a study of current conditions. So and really the bottom line of that, much to my chagrin and dismay on Main Street, is that there's not really a way to be arbitrary.
There's specific criteria that have to be met to justify that change in speed. Yeah. But I think that, well, let's make sure the police chief hears Councilmember Tracy's concerns about speeding and public safety.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's lots of tools that we can use. Any more discussion on item D? Mike, I'll give you 1 minute.
I'd just like to say that 30 miles an hour, if everybody was going 30 miles an hour, would not be a safety problem. I daily see people that are going 15 plus over the speed limit. I hear some of the rock trucks start their acceleration at the light at 9th Street, and if they've got a green light, they're going. And some of these heavy rock trucks are going 40, 45 miles an hour by the time they get to the 1200 block of Main, or of Royal Gorge Boulevard. And there's no traffic enforcement on Highway 50. period. I see I see an officer parked along Highway 50 every once in a while. I think they're catching up on paperwork. It might slow down somebody for a while, but there isn't
Okay.
there isn't.
All right, note taken. We're having a talk with Police Chief. Councilmember Tim Dennehy, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. You know, I'm listening to this, and this was all on before I was on as council as well, and I think that some of the medians and that could be an advantage. Do I think we need as many as on the plan? I don't know. I look at the other cities that are along Highway 50, and we will be the only one that has medians. Or Pueblo has a few, but they're a lot busier city than we are. There's none in Buena Vista. There's none in Salida. They do have the flashing lights. And, you know, right now, is this something that, again, it's CDOT money, but it is, you know, it's still all of our money. And I just want to make sure that we are doing this right. And I absolutely want to make sure that no businesses are being affected by this, because if somebody has to go down 2 blocks to make a left turn and then, you know, sees another business or something, that just hurt that business. I don't know even if the room wise, you know, we're saying medians on there, and I look at how narrow it is right now. Yeah, I'm real curious to see how this is going to work. So that's all.
Thank you. All right. Do we have a motion?
Well, Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion. I move that we award bid 6223 US 50 Highway Pedestrian Improvement Plan to Pyramid Construction in an amount not to exceed $3,994,318.
The water comes up this high and literally swallows this bridge. Why is it such a big deal? If the village
I'll second that.
There has been a motion and a second. Again, this is a project that's been underway for close to 10 years for pedestrian safety. It has something that we have been resilient in pursuing for a very long time. And understand that it is going to be a difficult change and a difficult. Tim, I think you need to go on mute. We're hearing a lot of background noise at your phone. It's going to be a big change for us. But I think it'll be a progress for us in the end, for the ultimate vision of Canyon City, for our public safety, for pedestrian safety, for creating a place where we arrive to somewhere special at our riverfront and to our downtown. And a lot of careful thought has been put into this by many, many, many people. Many eyes have been on this for a very long time. And we're finally to the point where we can actually start making some changes in doing this project. So there has been a motion, there has been a second. Is there any other further discussion by the council? Seeing none, I will call a vote.
Mayor, can you please tell me who gave the second?
Emily Tracy.
Thank you. Councilmember Dennehy.
Right now, just because I don't see the advantage of it, nay.
Schmisher.
Nay.
B. Smith.
Nay.
Stein.
Aye.
Tracy.
Aye.
Worthington.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye.
So the motion passes. We will now move on to item H, and this is to approve the short list of on-call engineering services. Leo is busy getting some contact information, which is very important that he does this. So Ryan, can you kind of hit us on this topic while we wait for Leo to come back on board?
I will try. The engineering department went through a very extensive RFP process to solicit on-call engineering firms for a various range of disciplines in the engineering field. A lot of this came out of some of our 2A discussions and the need to rebid services for 2A design work, and as well as some upcoming work that we're anticipating for some potential federal programs for the water department. The revolving loan fund being one of those. I know that there was a lot of time that went into reviewing. We had 27 different proposals. There was a lot of time that went into reviewing all of those individual responses and compiling this list. And,
Ryan, why do we have to have this list?
So for especially the federal programs that we work with, they require a bids RFQ process. So it has to be based on qualifications first, not necessarily based on the lowest cost. And it looks like we have Leo back, so I will call him up to cover any additional questions.
The question is, why do we have to have this list?
We have to have this list primarily for federal contracts is the biggest component that we need this list for. Federally funded projects that have architectural and engineering expenses require a qualifications-based selection. We have to go through a process to pick the best qualified firm to do the job. The process allows us to create a short list that we can then draw from the short list for a set period of time rather than issuing individual requests for proposals for each specific project. So the main requirement is that. The other thing that brought this up was our discussion during 2A, and I think the last time we had processed an amendment to extend additional work through Vivid Engineering that's done a lot of our 2A work up to date. We had wanted to step back and rebid that work and evaluate if that should be looked at again, so this was an opportunity for that. We have a few other projects on the horizon that we don't have anyone on staff that is certified to do the work. Specifically, we have a budget line item for pedestrian bridge inspections. We have 10 pedestrian bridges that we're responsible for as a city, and we don't have anyone on staff that's been through the 2-week bridge inspection course, so we need some outside assistance for that. And we're also working on an application for the Drinking Water Revolving Fund program to finance some of the water main improvements that go along with our 2A work. And we just could use some assistance in the engineering of that aspect. We have a very small in-house engineering group that keeps up with the permits and the inspections of the projects, but it also leaves us lacking a lot of time to do the design work and the work up front on these.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you. Leo, could you tell us a little bit about the scoring process? What were the criteria used? And maybe discuss that in general, please.
Yeah. So we did not have on-call contracts where I came from. I contacted CDOT. I had them provide me with a couple of examples that had been approved through the CDOT process from other communities that have done this. I believe they gave me Colorado Springs and Woodland Park. So I crafted an RFP based largely on those, vetted it through our attorneys, had CDOT review it to make sure it was compliant with their standards. But the scoring criteria was published right within the RFP. I can just kind of read them off for you if you'd like. We asked the question, does the proposal address all the elements of the RFQ? So just essentially, did the submitters, answer every question that we asked? Was the proposal logically organized and concise? Does the proposal show an understanding of the project objectives? So we listed several specific projects to make sure that the submitters, knew kind of what work we were looking for. At least what work we knew about, they knew what we were looking for. Does the proposal show the methodology to be used? Just looking for a general function of, the mindset and the steps that you would take as an engineer on a given project to take it from inception to completion. Are there any exceptions to the specification, scope of work, or agreement? We did include a copy of our standard professional services agreement just to see if they had any exceptions to that agreement or issues that would come up. Do the key staff fulfill the requirements of the identified specialty areas? So they were required to list a key staff member that was associated with each area they were submitting, and it's just an evaluation of if that staff member has the criteria that's needed. If I'm looking for a bridge inspector, are they certified to do bridge inspections? If I'm looking for a water main designer, are they a water operator, and those kind of things. Does the project manager have experience in the role? Pretty straightforward. And does the firm have experience working with federal, local, and state programs? I said a couple of the known projects have very specific program requirements that we're going to be going for, so having a firm that's worked within those before would be advantageous for us. And does the team have experience delivering on similar projects? So kind of looking for firms that have done on-call work in the past and have successfully completed that. We also included a score for references, where we did offer up to 10 points for references from each firm. And we contacted, I think we had 27 proposals submitted in total. I received reference callbacks, I think, from 26 of 27, so we did pretty well on that.
Thank you. And so based on the items that you just went through with us, cost or price was not included in that because there was really no bid. It was just essentially on qualifications. So when we want to use a firm off of this list, where does the cost the city will see come into play there?
So from this list, we're allowed to solicit a price from anyone that's on the short list. So we have a specific project need come up, we can solicit a price from the 5 firms that are on there. We would likely ask for other things like availability and specific names of what staff are going to be available if it's different than what was in your original proposal, and then we'd make a recommendation based on that.
I know several times as the city is bidding projects, when we're having construction done, we do give a preference for local contractors, but that's on price. And it's not necessarily on qualifications. Thank you.
We do have a citizen's request to speak to council. I'd like to invite Alex Ewers to come on up, please.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, City Council members and Madam Mayor, for your time today, as well as the time you spend preparing for all of these meetings. My name is Alex Ewers, and I'm with Three Rocks Engineering, which is a civil, structural, and transportation engineering firm headquartered here in Canyon City. Today, you will be selecting consulting firms for the city's on-call engineering list. 5 great firms are being recommended by the Public Works Department for each of several specialty areas. I believe the selection committee did a great job in their process, but I believe there is an opportunity potentially being missed if the approved list does not include a local firm. A team member and I had a great debrief with Public Works Director Leo Evans, and he explained their evaluation process and why we weren't selected for any of the specialty areas that we were applied for. One of the reasons is that of the 27 firms that applied, the specialty areas where we were strongest, such as design engineering, hydraulic engineering, and bridge inspection and engineering, were the most competitive areas. Additionally, by applying for the areas that we don't have as much experience in, such as water distribution and land development review, brought down our overall score. Three Rocks Engineering was founded 4 years ago, but already boasts 18 team members, including multiple engineers with more than 20 years of experience each. We work on projects locally for as little as a few $100s and 6-figure projects throughout the state and beyond. We host more high school interns than any other company in the county other than the hospital, and have provided several job opportunities to graduates fresh out of Canyon City High School. The firms that were selected for each specialty area are great firms. Many of them have been around for longer than I've been alive and have hundreds of employees, so I definitely have no reason to object to the fact that they outscored us. The evaluation criteria did not include factors that I believe are important, such as the ability to respond to a disaster in a timely fashion, the number of completed projects in the city of Canyon City, or the ability to drop by a job site at a moment's notice. I believe that the city is missing out on a great opportunity by not considering the benefits of including a local firm on the list. Our debrief with Leo was very positive, and he gave us really good advice on what additional information to include in our statement of qualifications when we were given the opportunity to apply again in 3 years. I really like Leo, so I provided him with a copy of what I would say today, and want to be clear that my intent is not to undermine him or his review team. Three Rocks Engineering is qualified to provide services to the city as we have in the past. We just didn't score as high as other firms in the evaluation areas that were considered, which is really hard for a firm that's our age and size. I'd invite the city council members to consider the benefits of having a local firm on the on-call list, to ask staff members that we've worked with already, such as Leo, Kathy, or Rick, if they believe that we are qualified. In conclusion, I believe that it's in the city's best interest to include Three Rocks Engineering as a 6th consultant on the on-call list for specialty areas design engineering, bridge inspection and engineering, hydraulic engineering, based on the qualifications that were not considered by the Public Works Department. I'd also encourage the city to use locality as a part of evaluation criteria for future RFQs and RFPs. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Definitely want to say that we really value having Three Rocks Engineering on Main Street, and that you are growing and you're expanding, and we really are grateful for the excellent work that you're providing in Canyon City. With all the growth that we're having, you're right in there. You're really boots on the ground helping to make all those things happen, and we're really proud to have a local firm doing all of those things for Canyon City and Fremont County. Ryan and Leo, do you have any responses for us in our considerations?
You know, the only thing I would offer, I really appreciate Alex. He's done a lot of good work here in the city. All of the projects he's been involved in that I've been a part of so far have been delivered successfully. Like I said, I think what hurts him in this selection is just a lack of experience and time on the job. You know, they haven't, as a firm, done a lot of work directly for public agencies. They've done a lot of work affiliated with public agencies on behalf of private developers, and that sometimes has a different feel to it, and sometimes has a different outcome when you're looking at how well would they work within those federal programs that have set guidelines and requirements, and you know, all the experience that needs to come with those. So, like I said, I think they're a great firm. They've done good work. I don't doubt his qualifications and his ability to do it. I think they don't have a lot of experience in some of these specific areas yet.
How can a firm get more experience if they're not provided the opportunity to do so?
You know, you can hire people that have done work for those things before. You know, I really value what he's saying about hiring, you know, high school graduates and hiring young people, but if you hire some experienced people that maybe have done some of this on-call work before or worked within these programs before, that could help your score.
Councilmember Worthington?
Is it possible when a job does become available that Three Rocks could become a subcontractor from one of these 5 to where they could work together?
Yes, that's a possibility.
Because that might give some of the experience they need for future jobs to increase their resume in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was also wondering, do we anticipate virtually all of our city engineering projects to go out specifically to this on-call list, or will there be other one-off projects that would be a full and open competition that Three Rocks would still be eligible to compete for?
There could certainly be others. I don't have any directly that I could tell you, but there's a possibility that there's projects that don't fit into any of that criteria that we've established. We established the criteria based largely on the things we've done and the things we know are coming, but there's always something that could come up that we don't know about that doesn't fit into those areas. There's opportunities where, you know, some of the firms decide that they're not available, or, you know, we get no responses from our short list. That's a possibility. You mentioned subcontracting is another one. Emergency purchases could be another situation that potentially warrants looking at other options besides the short list.
Thank you.
Anything else from council? Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not related directly to Mr. Ewer's comments, but just more broadly on the on-call engineering. If it is feasible using the qualifications-based requirements to treat the shortlist as an IDIQ and essentially bid out projects to all of the entities on the shortlist, so that you have multiple offers coming in that you're able to evaluate in terms of their technical capabilities, I do think that that would provide a better end product for the city. Obviously, if that's not permitted based on the qualifications and requirements of the grantors, completely understood, but I would hope that the city would look to have as full and open competitions within those short lists as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Leo has done some additional research on that and had some response from CDOT.
Yeah, CDOT did confirm that that is an allowable process for all the grants that they're aware of that they know. I haven't heard back from some of the other ones yet, but
CDOT says that it is allowable,
what was that?
that it is allowable?
Yes, it is allowable to take bids from anyone on the short list as opposed to starting with the top scoring firm and trying to negotiate with them and then working your way down till you reach an agreement.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know. I know when we were reading through like all the, like the federal requirements, like for the, if we get federal grant money, we have to follow all of these rules, and it's really cumbersome, and it's incredibly obnoxious and frustrating for people like our local entity that we really love and admire greatly. And I think that's the reason why sometimes it said, you know, sometimes grant money is a bigger pain than it's worth. And this is maybe one of those examples where there's some prices to pay to get that grant money. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On a further question, Leo, is it prohibited to establish a criteria based on locality? So in other words, if some of the issues that were brought up by Alex, you know, being able to respond quickly, this is an on-call list, is that correct? So in other words, all you have to do is pick up the phone and you can hire any one of these firms then from that basis without a bid, is that correct?
Not without a bid. They would still need to comply with the purchasing policy. So anything over $6,500 would come back to the council with a professional services agreement attached. It just gets us down to, you know, a short list of firms to call. So we're not setting back and doing a 6-8 week long process to bring you that contract every time it comes up.
But
To answer your other question about locality, it was not included in any of the two examples that I received from CDOT. I have done it in my past role in Michigan. Location was a scorable criteria on the matrix where you could assign, 1 to 5 points based on how close you were to a job site.
Mhm. So I would ask that I'm not sure we should redo this process, but, perhaps in the future you could include a locality criteria. But back to my previous question. So if there's a project, you notify the firms that are on the short list in a particular area, and you give them a request for a quote, essentially, and they provide a price, and then it would be awarded on that basis?
Yes, that would be the intention. Yeah, so for example, the US 50 pedestrian project has a need for someone to provide concrete testing for us. So we would reach out to the 5 firms that are material testing firms, say, here's our project schedule, here's the items of work, what does this cost in your sense, what's your availability to do it? And then we would bring back a recommendation to the city council.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Thanks. Very shortly, I just wholeheartedly support Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick's request that when we can include location as an evaluation factor, that we do so. Thank you.
Hear, hear. We do need to take a vote on this if someone would like to make a motion. Councilmember Worthington.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the short list of on-call engineering firms and direct staff to utilize the listing whenever feasible to future project needs.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmischer?
Aye.
D. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Thank you, council, thank you, staff, and still thank you, Alex. And as your firm continues to grow, and we are so just really grateful for all the work you do for Canyon City. You guys are amazing. It's time to move on to item 9A. This is introduction and adoption by title only of Resolution 15, Series of 2023, entitled, "A Resolution of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, establishing fees related to building and mechanical permits and rescinding Resolution Number 23, Series of 2020."
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got Kathy Olsher, building official, and maybe Attorney Sellers can help out with this one, but this is a pretty simple change, I think. Within the current regulations, it calls for staff to review annually the fees multiplier and then make a decision and bring it to City Council for approval. This change would make it so that we review it annually, but it does not necessarily need to come before City Council. Oftentimes, we do not have changes to the multiplier, and it just seems like another task that comes before City Council that doesn't necessarily need to come before City Council unless there is a change. So, Catherine or Kathy, did I?
No, I think you summarized it. Yeah, so it just requires that it be revised. That's what it says now, revised annually, or revised once a year. And this has been in place for 3 years now, and we've never revised it. So we just wanted to change that language to give a little bit more flexibility, because there's no real desire to revise it. But if it does get revised, we'd bring it back to you, or propose to be revised.
Kathy, would you like to address council?
Madam Mayor, Council, just the language changing so we don't have to come back every year for a revision. For the last several years, there's been no revisions to any fees. Going forward, if we do need a revision, then we'll come back to council to make those revisions.
Any questions for Kathy or the staff?
How often do they change?
Not very
What's the
often.
qualifier to raise them?
I think, if we were seeing that the cost to run the building department was exceeding the fees that we're bringing in.
Okay.
The building department's a department that, supports itself from a fee standpoint. I think that would be an indicator that we probably need to bring
Okay.
something back.
Not a crazy question, just wondering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
If there's no further questions, we can definitely take a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move we rescind Resolution 23, Series of 2020, and replace it with Resolution 15, Series of 2023.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
E. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
All right. Well, that was an easy one. We've had a lot of tough decisions to make tonight, and there's still more to be made. And that would be item 9B, and that's the 2024 budget. So I'd like to introduce and for adoption by title only of Resolution 16, Series of 2023, entitled, "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, summarizing expenditures and revenues for each fund and adopting a budget for the City of Canyon City."
And I will turn the time over to Finance Director Tammy Nordyke.
Hi, Tammy.
Good evening. Before you, you have Resolution 16, Series of 2023, which will adopt the budget for calendar year beginning first day of January 2024 and ends the last day of December 2024. There have been changes made from the proposed budget that are included in this resolution. General fund was increased by $91,500. Quality of Life Fund was increased by $362,737. Two-Way Street Improvement Fund was increased by $500,000, and the Stormwater Enterprise Fund was increased by $500. When we had the hearing, we did note that changes to the proposed budget would be coming forward based on projects that were started and were being carried forward into 2024, and we would get revised estimates from the departments. Those are included in this. We also do have some changes reflected based on awarding of RFPs. Some of them were not all increases. One of them was a decrease. And then the other changes related to some of the potential increases in utility costs after we revisited, based also looking at past history and consumption. And with that, I would ask that council approve the resolution.
All right, well, are there any comments or discussion? Councilmember Schmisher?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am still concerned about allocating $1 million of local funds to the Clock Tower Plaza development. I think we have other higher priorities for capital improvements in our city, including the riverfront properties. Given the increases folks are seeing in their property taxes, I would also be in favor of reducing our mill levy rather than spending $1 million of local funds for the redevelopment of Clock Tower Plaza. Once we have other downtown parking established, I am not necessarily opposed to the redevelopment of Clock Tower Plaza if we can obtain grant funds to do so. However, we have many other outstanding needs within our city, and I do not think that the redevelopment of Clock Tower Plaza is the highest need for our local funds. Thanks.
We often talk about how we do studies and then it just goes onto a shelf. And your proposal would be putting something on the shelf, something that has been in the motion for a really long time. As a matter of fact, the people of Canyon City have spoken many times about a desire to see more opportunities for public and open spaces. There was a survey done in 2017. I had it pulled up on my iPad, but the internet service is not loading the page now that I'm here at City Council. It brings up that survey that was done. It was a scientific survey. It showed 77% support for being able to do these types of projects. That's a really big percentage for Canyon City to do that. We also had the comprehensive master plan, which was an incredible achievement in really getting tons and tons of public input, not just from individuals, but from businesses, from agencies, from clubs, on how their vision of what Canyon City can and should be. And a Clock Tower Plaza is more than just having a plaza downtown. It is actually a part of the Centennial Master Plan for the parks. I know you supported having the park, the headquarters moved. It has, even before it got grant money, you were willing to spend $1.4 million to move that. Luckily, we did get $700,000 to compensate 50% of that. And the Clock Tower Plaza is actually part of that master plan that was done.
And
because
I think
the idea is that it connects the river to downtown. The 3rd Street corridor is an incredibly important part of the ultimate vision of Canyon City's potential and future for vitality. And it's also a place where there's business incubators to help get new businesses to be able to have a place to sprout and grow and be able to turn into the brick and mortar opportunities. It's a connection from Centennial, Train, Veterans, up 3rd Street to downtown, across to Macon Plaza. There's actually an entire loop where it goes around. It is something that has been vetted for a very long time, and as I went through the comprehensive master plan today to kind of review and see what it had said, and it was mentioned many, many, many times. And while I went back, I wasn't at the budget hearing, but I went and listened through it today, and there was extensive conversations about it, and most of those conversations were, if we don't get the COPS grant, then how can we justify that? And thank heavens we got the COPS grant. We got grant money to get more cops on patrols, foot patrols downtown and at our parks. And so we are providing an incredible expansion of public safety to our citizens, which I think is incredibly important. But I also think that we should not empower the homelessness to stop us from our growth as a community, to reach our full potential for having vibrancy in our businesses and economic development, which is part of what this little piece of property has incredible potential to provide.
I think that you raised a couple of really great other really high priorities that we don't have funding allocated for. One of those is Centennial Park, once that building is moved up to South 9th, and ensuring that we do actually build that out and make the best use of that space. Another is the Black Hills Clark Station property. I think both of those are much more integral to the needs and to the future growth and to the kind of future of our city. And we don't have funds yet allocated for those. Both of those are also directly responsive to the 2017 study that you cited in terms of 77% of people wanting to see more parks and open spaces. Both of those also have had extensive studies and plans done for them.
But it's not shovel-ready, and it's meant to be phased. And so it is in phasing process, and the clock tower is phased the most and has gone the first in that phase of that comprehensive plan. It doesn't mean those others aren't going to happen, but it's going to take some time to get through each and every one of those. Black Hills, we have $280,000 that is earmarked that we can use for that. We also have some other property that we can sell specifically to pay for that property. We have lots of options.
To pay for the acquisition, not to pay for the development.
Well, there's processes, and it takes time. Black Hills is one that's probably taken over 10 years to get to, and we're still working on it. And it's still going to take some time. It's a long-term process. But also the moving of the Parks Department, that's going to be a process too. We're not quite ready. It's not shovel-ready to go to the next phase yet. But with time, it is a priority, and it's something we're looking towards. It's something that we've also had tons of public input to, and I think there is support for it. And I hate seeing us put so much effort into something, especially when we're already doing changes on the first and third. There is a great opportunity now to have an economy of scale as we're doing that development there, that to include at least some phases for Clock Tower Plaza, that there's some savings there. We've proven that investing in Main Street on the 4th and 5th blocks, it's taken some time to see, but it has transformed those blocks, that investments that they've made, and really can see a difference that has made in making that a vibrant place where businesses are hopping and running. And Main Street has been begging it's been a long, long time since we put a significant amount of money and investment into Main Street, and they've been begging to have their turn back, to have some desperately needed infrastructure improvements. So those are my 2 cents, but we have others who have gotten into the queue, and that would start with Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. When I ran for City Council 2 years ago, one of the things I did, in fact, Andrea and I did it together, as I recall, we walked all of the commercial area of downtown along Main Street. Went into every business, every store, and it is striking. If you walk, you may not notice it when you drive, but if you walk from one set of blocks to then that west end, it's such a stark difference. And I do think it's important that we have public investment at that west end of Main Street. It will really help, I think, that area, and there's lots more that we're going to do as the money becomes available. I probably shouldn't use this analogy, but it does. When I walked that stretch running for office, it reminded me of when I visited Berlin in 1995, 6 years after the wall had come down. Sorry. If that offends anybody, I apologize. But it was like walking from West Berlin to East Berlin. It was like, I'm not in Canyon City anymore when I crossed into that west end of Main Street, because it's just in such need of so much work. And some of it's going to be private investment, but some of it needs to be public investment. And we're fortunate, I think, through the very careful budgeting that we do each year and the oversight that staff provides in not only providing us information on the budget, but also in making sure that we are spending our money carefully and wisely. We're fortunate with that and with the amount of money we've gotten in grants to really be able to do some public investment that perhaps we didn't do enough of in the past. And so there are concerns about this amount of money in the local funds, but I think it will be a good investment. I think it will help vitalize that part of town and provide those connections as the mayor referenced.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Schmisler, did you have a specific recommendation or what you would like to see done on this issue?
Sure. So like I said, I think that there are several other higher priorities for these funds. I think the Black Hills Clark Station property is an exceptional example of something that that could be a linchpin for the future of Canyon City. Making sure that we acquire that property and that we very quickly move forward on a much more detailed plan for how to get it shovel-ready, hopefully shovel-ready by the end of 2024 so that we could actually use some of these funds on that. I think would be a much better use of funds. I think ensuring that we had that property right along the river for a private boat take in and put in and take out. We have one of the best stretches of Arkansas River, one of the best stretches of river anywhere in the world, and I would love for our people to be able to actually access that much more easily. I think having RV camping there would be fantastic. I think having an open space on both sides of the river would be fantastic, and right now we don't have the funds allocated to actually move forward beyond possibly acquisition of the property. That's one idea. Another idea might be Centennial Park. I understand that we might not be able to move the park building up until the second half of next year, so that one might not be ready for 2024. I agree, but these are capital funds and that could potentially be phased in early 2025 if it isn't ready in 2024. And again, given the increases that people are seeing on their property taxes, I also would not be opposed to a mill levy reduction on the part of the city. I think it's incumbent upon us to manage not only the city's funds, but really they're the people's funds wisely, and to ensure that we are doing that. I think that's, from my perspective, another higher priority as well. Thank you.
And if I could follow up, what I'm asking for is, do you have a specific proposal? I mean, what I believe I heard was two proposals. One, that we cut these funds out of the budget for the clock tower, and two, that we look at doing a mill levy reduction to account for that difference. Is that correct? In other words, the effect on the budget would be neutral, as opposed to if we just cut the funds out, that would be, we would put $1 million more into our reserve fund then. Without other changes to the budget. That's what I'm asking, is do you have specific ideas of what should be done to accomplish that?
So I would want to see those funds those capital funds, instead of going towards Clock Tower Plaza, I would want to see the bulk of them going towards the Black Hills Clark Station property, in terms of both ensuring that we have the acquisition covered as well as implementation of the beginning of the plan that's been done there as well. And if additional plans need to be created, I guess it wouldn't be shovel ready, but to ensure that it's implementation ready, that we have the funds to cover those so that we aren't just sitting on yet another property. So I would want to move the bulk of the funds from Clock Tower Plaza into another capital project that I think is a higher priority for the city, actual riverfront property. Whatever remainder is there that we wouldn't necessarily need for the Black Hills Clark Station property implementation, I could see a mill levy reduction being a great thing for the people of Canyon City. Thanks.
Tell me, how much do we get in mill levy revenues lately? I know it's pretty small.
I think our proposed budget, is showing nearly, $600,000?
Yes, that's right.
And we will not be, depending on the results of the election, we will not be setting our mill levy until either December or January.
So mill levy decision is coming up in the future.
It
That is
depends on what
correct.
happens with Proposition HH and what the impacts of that will be.
Oh, gotcha. We have the money to acquire Black Hills. It's a legacy project. It's going to be like the Royal Gorge. We have to protect that river for the public. I am not worried about that acquisition. And I know that we need to, it's not even close to shovel ready yet, but we do need to have official engineering and plans done. I mean, this is going to be a process to get through that. And we just need to have some patience. Like, let's acquire the property, let's get the engineering done, let's get the visions. In the meantime, we still have opportunities to grow for projects that have been a priority for many people across Canyon City. And it's so much so that we've already invested the money to make sure that it is prepared and ready to make those investments.
It was grant funding that paid for the bulk of that design.
Yeah,
It wasn't.
and we are seeking more grant funding for the clock tower. We'll be seeking grant money for the Black Hills to see it come through. We seek grant money for everything we possibly can. I'm actually really proud that most of the capital improvement projects that are being done in 2024 is actually being paid by grant money. That is an incredible achievement for Canyon City and something that did not happen 8 years ago.
No, it's a testament to the city's grant writer, Brandy Sheets. We should be very appreciative of
We do have a
all of the
citizen
work
that would
she has
like
done.
to address the council.
I can fill out the paperwork here in a little bit, but Bob Willett, 151 Blue Grouse, Kansas City. I was on the River Corridor Committee from its outset until its dissolution. And an adjunct to that, I was also involved with the Highway 50 islands and all that. To your point about the power plant property, I love it. I love that property. In fact, I wanted to buy the building before they tore it down. But in that committee, we studied that, and the remediation process cost for that property are astronomical. So that was kind of put way on the back burner for that kind of stuff. But at any rate, I think just listening to this discussion and the discussion earlier about the medians and all that, and please don't take me the wrong way. I'm just trying to help out here. That there's some misinformation or you're uninformed or something. If you could go back, I mean, these gentlemen that spoke against the median plan, yeah, I know, they were there then. CDOT came in. CDOT didn't want the whole thing to begin with, but apparently they worked with the city and came up with something that was agreeable. And so my suggestion at that point when I was listening to that was that perhaps if the minutes are available to those meetings and those public hearings and all that stuff, or the reports or whatever the city made following those things, that you go back and familiarize yourselves with all that stuff that came out of that. I mean, like I said, the River Corridor, that was a big deal because that was near and dear to my heart. But like I said, the power plant property was it. So anyway, just make sure you're looking at all the information available to you. Hopefully, that a lot of that information is available. Regarding some of these issues you're talking about right now, because I know what you're talking about. Most of this committee work that I sat on, we were done well before COVID. You know, so there's been a big lapse in time before. I think maybe John was around and Ashley was around during that time and involved in that aspect of stuff for the city. So just make sure you're looking into all the information to make an informed decision. I truly, truly understand where you're coming from on this stuff of the city, because I mean, I see tremendous potential for the city. And it's going to be what you guys make it for your kids, your grandkids, and everything else. I mean, I'm an old guy, I'm fixing to be done, you know, so I always jump in just to offer my 2 cents worth, which not worth much most of the time, but anyway, I'm sitting over there going, you know, so just please inform yourselves thoroughly on all this stuff, because I think you'll come up with a little different take on some of the stuff, like what you're talking about with we really looked hard at that. But like I said, just the remediation of that property is outrageous. So, I mean, clock tower, the money for clock tower ain't nothing compared to that. I mean, it goes back to the Cotter thing, like like you talk about, because I know about that too. But, it's crazy. So anyway, I'll shut up, but I couldn't sit still. So,
Thank you, Bob.
please forgive me for jumping in there.
Thank you. Andrea, I have you, or Councilmember Stein, I have you next in the queue. Do you want to go next? We also have Chris Moffitt in the audience that would like to address the council.
Yes, I can do whatever.
Well, it's your choice. Okay.
Okay, I know that I'm kind of old and I forget things, but didn't we have a budget hearing a while back, a couple weeks ago? And I think we talked about the same thing then, only that time it was, we needed, in case we didn't get the grant for the cops. And then I have, second part, Ryan, how many people responded? I know we did several surveys about the development of Clock Tower Mall. How many citizens weighed in on that?
Oh, the first survey, there was near 1,000, and the second survey was a few hundred.
Okay. So there's a lot. That's in a community this size. I think that's a pretty large response. And I think tonight we're being asked to adopt the budget. And, we can bring these things up again, but if we want to change the direction of how we're developing the city, I think maybe we should do that at a different time. And if our choice tonight is either adopt the budget or not, and if not, then we have to go back to the drawing board. Am I right?
We would have to incorporate changes, and if it's significant, I'm not sure if we'd have to have another public hearing or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're going to amend your budget, you have to have another public hearing.
Another budget hearing. Okay. That's all I needed. I'm sorry. That's enough.
Thank you. Chris Moffitt, we're ready to hear from you.
Hello, council, staff, how's it going? Hello, I'm Chris Moffitt. Citizen at 306 Griffin Avenue in Canyon City. I'm the president of Royal Gorge Rio, Fremont County's river-based 501c3, as well as the Whitewater event coordinator of the Royal Gorge Whitewater Festival, and avid river user. So yeah, it came to my attention there was $1 million allocated for the clock tower. And as a person who works on a bunch of projects in town, I was surprised, and unfortunately I didn't get to attend the budget meeting. I wish I would have been able to be here to mention it, or mention something regarding it. But there's a lot of opportunities in town to use that money, and I know we all know that, and I know you all have been working very hard on the clock tower project, but I'm aware of the River Corridor Master Plan as well, and all the projects that are related to that. Maybe we earmark just a little bit of the money for Clark Station, the Black Hills project. That, to me, is such a massive need in this community. We have almost, it depends on the year, but over 200,000 river users that come through just Canyon City in the summertime, and they are having to use either a private takeout or it's called River Station, which is right by the train station, which is very small and not amenable to the commercial outfitters. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that part of the Black Hills property is providing a takeout for all of our river outfitters that provide a very large economic impact in this community. that we all know. And you know, right now they're having to pay Pink House, or they're having to work out some weird situations with at the River Station takeout. So just getting a takeout at Black Hills as soon as possible would benefit those outfitters, and it would just make it a lot easier for them to maybe even have a bit more traffic around there. Right now they pay fees to use the put-ins and takeouts provided by the Arkansas Headwaters Association, and without, you know, they're paying double basically because they also have to pay the Pink House people. So that's one thing that I'd like that for. Also, Royal Gorge Rio is $97,000 away from having enough money to be shovel ready on the, so that would get us to 60%, which is shovel ready for the wave that would be at the Skyline Steel property that we've talked about for years now, as well as get us a survey of the whole river corridor from First Street to Black Bridge and help us adjust a lot of those features that do need maintenance. And that's why I'm disappointed I didn't know about the budget meeting, because those features in the river do require maintenance every now and then, just due to sediment or whatever happens with them. So that's another idea. And then a public pool. But that's, you know, I could keep going on, but I think those are my three big things. Is maybe this money could, you know, we could put a lot of it towards the clock tower, but also allocate it towards these other things and start saving for those bigger projects.
Yeah, I think the boat intake and outtake is one example of where we can have a public-private partnership to make that happen sooner than later.
You're right, absolutely. I know that AHRA would definitely step in.
You guys are ready to jump on it. We're ready to jump on it. We just,
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about that happening.
Okay, cool. Good. I mean, I just don't know, I don't know. It would be nice too to know where that is, and that's a different meeting,
Well,
I'm
first
sure.
we have to acquire the land.
Right, I know.
And
What's
then-
going on with that, guys?
What's going on with that? We just got an appraisal from Black Hills, and so we're ready to start maybe go into negotiations.
Yay, awesome, thank you.
Awesome, thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. Councilmember Tracy, I still have your name in here. I don't know if that was a new one or if that was left from.
It's a new
previous-
one, thank
okay.
you. And it's been partly answered. I just wanted to be sure that Chris or no one thinks that there's a trade-off of any kind between Clock Tower project and the Black Hills property. And we are in discussions, the city is in discussions with Black Hills on that. We'll just have to see where that goes. Nothing that we can address further than or in addition to what the mayor already said. But I think it's important, the rest of what you mentioned too, around all of these things along the river. And we have to play our part. We want to play our part on all of that and not exclude. But Black Hills is in the works. Don't worry about that. There's going to be some other things we have to do some hard work on too, to make sure that this bigger picture of really bringing the Arkansas River to focus in this community the way it can be. There's a lot of work to do, but we're in the fight.
I like how you say, Emily, that this is not a pick either or. It's just, that's part of the master planning, is whenever we have some money, we put it towards a little something. We make sure that each little something adds up to that big picture that we've already mapped out. And that, I know all of Canyon City wants to see the Black Hills developed, and I'm as equally excited about it as you are. Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to disagree a bit. We do have trade-offs. We do have a finite budget. We do have more priorities than we are able to fund. So these are trade-offs that we're making. Thanks.
Is any other further discussion? I actually do want to discuss this.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Tim, go ahead, but then, just to give a heads up, I want to have more explanation about that COPS grant that we've mentioned, because last budget hearing, it was all, we don't know if we're gonna get it or not, we're gonna have to really make some cuts if we don't get it, but we got it, and so I wanna talk a little bit more about that too. Okay, but Councilmember Dennehy first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I kind of want to voice in on this because when I ran for council 4 years ago, the one thing that I really stressed was, you know, let's get the river moving, and let's try to get down. The city has acquired Skyline Steel property. It has been cleaned up, looks fantastic. I know Acorn Petroleum still needs some, we need to work on that. And obviously the ice house, whatever, Airy Brothers is going to do with that. But I'm kind of in agreement here. I think we have some other priorities, and I'm just voicing my opinion here. And when I ran because I wanted to see more stuff on the river. And, even moving the Parks Department up, we can allocate a little more money for them to try to move some of these things to get that river cleared up. I honestly believe if you took a survey of people in town, where they'd rather see the money spent on the river or in downtown area, people would say the river. We need to expand our river. We have the worst river system as far as anything on it going from Buena Vista to Pueblo. We're the only city that doesn't have anything. And I still think that needs to be more of a priority than just about anything, because I believe that'll be the best revenue maker for the city. And so in that terms, I agree with Councilwoman Smisher. I think monies just need to be earmarked for something a little bit different right now. Thank you.
I would say if we're going to, first we have to acquire the land. So, we're really jumping the gun here because we have to enter negotiations to get that. And it has to go to the PUC. There is a really long process to get to that point. And when we do acquire it, which I hope it really does work out, we definitely hope that can happen for Canyon City. I think the next step would be to do an engineering plan, and that would also entail a lot of additional public input, because the plans that are conceptualized for Black Hills is very, very, very general, and it needs to be a very specific plan, and we still need to have probably another citizens group to get together and really nail what they want to see there and make sure that we provide a product that the citizens want. That's going to take a while, which means if we can see that happen in 2024, 2025, we might be ready to start putting some money into there and maybe have some grant money to help with it. But before we get to you, Amy Schmischer, I did ask Ryan to speak next about the COPS grant.
Yes, so we did receive the COPS grant. That's a Department of Justice grant. We are looking at it for funding 5 full-time sworn officer positions, 1 park ranger and 4 bike patrol officers, so we can cover each side of the week. So they would be focused on downtown alleys, the Riverwalk, those types of areas where we see some of the increased concerns from the community, and very excited that we did receive that grant. We actually have a internal meeting on Monday to talk about how we're going to receive the grant and make sure that we work through any logistics before we send our response back to the Department of Justice.
Thank you. It's really exciting to have that. I just spoke to a citizen today speaking about some safety concerns he was having downtown, and I told him about the COPS grant, that we're going to have foot patrols, and it was just this relief of thank you, thank goodness, we really need that. It's going to make me feel a lot better.
The next challenge will be recruiting the officers.
Now we need to get them. Everything's a process.
If you don't mind, if I could talk a little bit about some of the riverfront activity versus downtown activity.
Sure.
We often hear from, especially our downtown business owners, about concerns about the riverfront developing and not having a good corridor connection between those two things. That what we're doing with Clock Tower Plaza, what we're doing with the pedestrian crossing project, those are things that help alleviate some of those concerns from our downtown business owners, so they don't get disconnected from the future development of the river corridor. So I know sometimes it might seem like these things are happening in a bubble or a vacuum, but they really are all working together as part of a larger plan in order to improve the overall economic activity of the community. And that, having that 300 or the Third Street connection between the river, Centennial Park, and downtown, that's a key component of that. And if you have something that's half built when you get to the top on Main Street, what are the impressions that you send from that standpoint as well? So there's a lot of things, as Mr. Willett said, that have gone into getting to this point. Sometimes you have to take a step back and take a look at the whole picture to see how it's all coming together.
And literally, that 3rd Street corridor plan, that kind of yellow brick road creation to attract that traffic going both ways, is literally in that river plan. It's in the river plan. It's actually in several plans. Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to double check, do we have funding built into the 2024 budget for an engineering plan for the Black Hills Clark Station property, for the public input process for that property, and for the public input process for the Centennial Park area where the Parks building will have been by the end of 2024? Thanks.
We have put funding in for the Black Hills site. It's dependent upon some additional grant funding for the planning process. It does, what we proposed was utilizing some of the $280,000 from Black Hills to help cover that. But I think that's what it was intended for, is to help develop and plan out that site. So that is built into the budget.
So it is built into the budget.
Yeah.
And I think in listening to the public hearing, that the clock tower, it can have phases as well. And so if there needs to be some wiggle room, we have some wiggle room to make sure that that engineering study can get done, so that it'll be prepared and ready and be shovel ready for the next phase.
Yeah, and going through the planning site for Black Hills, just like the Clock Tower Plaza, you're gonna be looking at 30, 50, 70% design and all those types of things, getting the cost estimates on building what the preferred design is, and then looking at value engineering to get to what, something that's manageable. All those things, when we go through all these different planning processes, we'll planning on doing the exact same thing for the Black Hills site.
Wonderful. It's going to be an exciting time when we can really start moving forward on that. Is there any other questions for Tammy further about the budget that we need to vent out after we had that public hearing already? That it's time to vote on this for our resolution. Councilmember Tracy.
Microphone.
Sorry, thank you. I'm prepared to offer a motion on the resolution. I assume we need separate motions for the resolution and the ordinance. And I would go ahead and move for adoption of Resolution 16, Series of 2023, summarizing expenditures and revenues for each fund and adopting a budget for the City of Canyon City as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Tim, did you have anything?
No.
All right, I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmischer?
Nay.
B. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hemrick?
Aye.
All right, the budget for 2024 has passed. Thank you for your hard work, staff, on creating this. I think it's very responsible. Also want to say that we have that 24% savings account in there for if their hard times hit, that we're prepared for hard times as well in that. Let's go on to B2, that's introduction and first reading by title only of Ordinance 14, Series of 2023, entitled, "An Ordinance Appropriated Sums of Money to Various Funds in the Amounts and for the Purpose as Set Forth Below for the 2024 Budget Year."
So this ordinance appropriates the funds that you just adopted in the 2024 budget. It is for the same figures. So that's about it.
Any questions from council? Let's have a motion. Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I move for approval of ordinance number 14, Series of 2023 on first reading.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Nay.
E. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
All right, thank you again. We're now on item 9C. This is second reading and adoption by title only of Ordinance 12, Series of 2023, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending Section 5.30.010 of the Canyon City Municipal Code to allow administrative approval of retail establishment applications. This is the second reading. We had the first. It's so far has been widely accepted, and businesses are anxious to get this ready for the holidays. Councilmember Schmisher.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, I'd love that.
That we approve on second reading, or by second reading and adoption by title only of Ordinance 12, Series of 2023.
Second.
There's been a motion and many a second. Any discussion? Call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
E. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Congratulations to our retail establishments and being able to have some special occasions to celebrate. 9D, this is also a second reading, and this is for the compensation of the city administrator. Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I would move for approval of ordinance number 13, series of 2023 on second reading with the addition of one word in section 1. I suggest adding the word annual before the word compensation, just to clarify.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Catherine, our attorney, do we have a thumbs up on that? Thumbs up on that?
I'm fine with that. Yep.
This is the second reading. Ryan had to work really hard to earn this, this raise. We had a really long list of high expectations of what we wanted to have accomplished. And we're really proud of the work of Ryan Stevens and the staff that he leads, and appreciate all the work that he does in the benefit of Canyon City. Do we have a motion on this? Yeah, Councilmember Smith? Or did we already did that, right? In a second. We had seconds? Okay, let's vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
E. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Ryan, for your work for Canyon City.
Thank you.
As now for item 9E, this is a first reading and introduction for Ordinance 11, Series of 2023, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending Sections 13.04.050 and 13.04.120 of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning use of private wells upon connection to the city's water system.
He's been waiting patiently. I'll
This
turn
has
it
been a
over
long
to
time.
Water Superintendent Travis Payne to talk about the well ordinance. This has gone before general government. It's gone before Water Committee, and I'll let him talk about the details.
So this ordinance kind of seeks to codify longstanding policy of when a property connects to the city water system, that they disconnect from their house the well system. So this is a major backflow concern that we want to make sure gets into code so we have something to fall back on if it's ever challenged. It's hard for staff to fall back on just policy when there's a major challenge to something like this, so we want to make sure it's in code. For clarification, we want to make sure that, you know, people with a legal well can still utilize that well for irrigation or for other water uses, just not domestic uses in their house where somebody could just make a simple connection over to our water system and then possibly contaminate that water system. So as City Administrator Stevens pointed out, went before Vision Committee and Water Committee, and so there was kind of two sets of red lines that came from that, and I asked the attorneys to do their best in going through those red lines and providing the document that you see before you, the red lines and the clean version, that seeks to incorporate those red lines, all the input that we did get, but still have a really strong ordinance that seeks to, provide the intended use without any unintended consequences.
Thank you. Any questions from council or comments? Councilmember Schmischer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a little confused by the city attorney's requested edits. I guess I don't understand why we're seeking to disconnect existing private water wells where there is no chance of cross-contamination. Thanks.
So I'm sorry, you're going to have to be more specific about what your concern is. I'm not following your
Sure.
comment.
I believe that what you had deleted was that is connected to the city's water system.
Mm-hmm.
So if it isn't connected to the city's water system, I don't believe that there would be a concern about cross-contamination. So I'm wondering why we need to, if there isn't a concern about cross-contamination, why we would be concerned about them still having a connection.
Well, I
Thanks.
think as I understand it, and Mr. Payne can correct me, is that the way that this is worded is that, so there's very few wells that are connected to the system to start with. So the language that was suggested there that I'm deleting would narrow the ordinance to almost nothing. So it would be pretty much ineffective, because most wells are not connected to the city's water system. They're individual wells. Does that make sense?
Yes, but
Okay.
if they're individual wells and they aren't connected to the city's water system and our concern is about cross-contamination, why would we be concerned about cross-contamination?
So, so if you want the property to disconnect from the existing well for potable water purposes, he just explained that they could connect into the system if they're still using them for potable water. And that's the disconnection we want to see. But the way that this was changed, you would limit the effectiveness of this ordinance to, it would apply to so few wells because they have to be connected to the water system to even be covered under this language. Do you understand?
I do. I think
Okay.
maybe you don't understand my question, though.
Okay.
Maybe try explaining it in a different way.
Okay. So the way that this was changed, okay, that the first trigger is that the water well had to be connected to the city's water supply in order to even trigger the application of this language. Very few wells, if any, right, are connected to the city's water supply. With that language in there, this ordinance would have almost no effect, period. The goal of the ordinance is to have people disconnect their potable water from their existing well on their property, because we don't want them to continue to use that well for potable uses and then connect into the city's system, which is what Mr. Payne just described.
Do you have anything to expound on that?
Yeah,
Travis, to
I
further
think
explain?
just the simple trigger of it already being connected should be removed, because that should not be the only trigger. We want to make sure there's also the possibility that somebody just working in their plumbing can't then connect. So even if it's not connected, we want to make sure they disconnect from the dwelling. Does that make sense? Is that a better explanation of that?
Yeah, that's helpful. I guess I'm wondering then if it would be clearer if we added the words non-domestic, or if we added the words disconnect from any existing potable private water well. Because I think right now we're setting up kind of a cognitive dissonance between that sentence and the next sentence that I don't think is necessary. So I think by adding in which private water wells we're talking about, and I understand your concern about not wanting to limit it or not wanting to be so specific, but if we really are talking about non-domestic or about non-potable, then I think we could add in that adjective and make it a lot clearer.
Is there any harm in doing that?
So we could add any existing private water well used for potable water. Is that some?
Yeah, Yes, but that also is semi-limiting because that would say, well, there's an outbuilding where they're using it for potable water that is, far away from their residence. And again, I think that might be limiting and saying, well, you can't have any domestic use for the well, which may not be the case. You could have a large property and that well is serving a whole separate section that we may be okay with. So I just wouldn't want to limit that either,
No, definitely. I wouldn't want to make it more limiting, but I'm concerned that doesn't the next sentence do exactly that?
I just would humbly disagree in saying
Please.
that, the next sentence saying the owner may continue to utilize that a new or existing well for non-domestic use, so as long as the use is authorized, and there's no cross-connection between the well and the city's water system. So I think that last portion of the sentence, as long as there's no cross-connection between the well system and the city's water system, gives us that kind of leeway in saying, okay, is it that building or is it a separate section of a property where they can use it for domestic use, but there isn't going to be any realistic possibility of a cross connection. So again, is it in the same building where somebody could just do their own private plumbing and make a connection and oopsie daisy, or is it, an outbuilding far away where there would have to be a lot of work put into it?
How would we be able to tell that, or how would they know whether or not they had, so I mean, it says such use is authorized by a valid well permit, so would they then need to, at the same time that they're putting in for the city connection, ask us for a valid well permit so that you could make that determination?
A well permit would go through the state.
Yeah, they'd have one already.
Yeah.
Most likely, unless
Yeah.
they have an exempt well.
Unless they had an exempt well, otherwise it would be an illegal well. And if they wanted a new well, it would have to go through an application with the state. The state would ask them to then come to us for a letter authorizing it, so saying that we have no reason to deny it. And so there is some processes there.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
the state would have to come to you and you would be able to make that determination?
Yep. We have to authorize any new well in our water district
Okay.
boundaries.
My only other comments were I was a little bit disappointed. I know that it originally went through the water committee, and I understand that these new revisions did not go back through the water committee. So I guess I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have an attorney there at the vision committee meeting to provide those comments in real time, and then at the October 25th water committee, I guess they didn't talk about the changes in detail. So just wanted to comment on that.
Good note. We do have Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick and then Councilmember Tracy next.
So what we're trying to do here is if there's a property that has a well and has city water service, we want to ensure that the well is not cross-connected to the city's water system. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, so this says when a property connects, and properties don't connect, property can be connected. When a property is connected to the city's water system, the property owner is required to disconnect from any existing private water well, period. However, the owner may continue to utilize a new or existing well for non-domestic use, so long as such use is authorized by a valid well permit and there is no cross-connection between the well system and the city water system. As I was listening to this discussion, one of the things, domestic use includes gardens. So we don't want to say non-domestic use because we're really trying to protect a potable water system. We're not trying to impose restrictions on how people can use a valid well permit, okay? And I also make my point again, a property does not connect. A property can be connected when a property is connected. But the idea here is if you have a well, it can't be connected to the water system. That's what we're trying to say. That's what we're trying to say, and I think that we're having problems trying to say that, and I think that we've got a couple of different ideas that are contradictory here in talking about potable water and non-domestic water, and we need to fix that because that's not the intent. What the intent is to allow domestic uses of the water as long as it's not connected to the potable water system. Domestic uses can include watering gardens.
Catherine, do you have any response to the watering gardens and the definition of whether that's legally domestic or non-domestic?
Yeah, I mean, those are the state terms. The concept of domestic being used for a garden is a state level term. We can change that non-domestic. I'm not opposed to changing that non-domestic to be clear that it's the potable water use, as long as Travis is okay with that. Yeah, we can tweak that language. I don't have an issue with that.
Okay.
So on the subject, so if we want to, the question I think that Councilmember Schmischer has raised is, should we send this, after we get another draft, should we send this back to the Water Committee or not? And is there time constraints on us acting on this?
No, there are not. No, and it probably was my fault for not putting this on the water agenda before, but I guess we already had 2 sets of revisions, and then we revised those revisions, and I was worried about having revisions on the revised revisions.
Yes, and
so I just felt there needed to be a point of clarity before we went too far.
Well, hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah.
But I would recommend that we have another draft and that we send it back to the Water Committee for review.
There might be an issue.
Well, no, there's no issue.
Okay.
I think there just needs to be some clarification. We have multi-level committees here, and are we gonna always kick things back until it, I think council needs to provide some.
We're honoring the intent of that water committee. It's just fine-tuning the language so it's more clear for us. I think we're capable of doing that.
I would
Yeah, and
agree
moving
that you are,
forward.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, so staff understands what your expectations are with things like that. I think that's,
Oh.
do you see what I'm saying? Like,
see.
if staff understood it needed to go back to the water, and that's what you would have desired, then we could have done that. And I think that's kind of a juggling
Well,
thing.
I probably contributed this because I was one of the ones that revised the revisions to the revisions, I think, but I understand what you're saying.
It's not your fault.
We do have Emily Tracy in the queue, so let's hear from you, and then we'll go from there.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion since I first pushed my little blue button.
Yes, there has. I'm sorry.
And it seems to me at this point, and I could be wrong, it seems to me that it's really, more than anything else, just a wording issue in that one section. And that doesn't mean we can solve it right now, but I also hesitate saying it needs to go back to committee for wordsmithing. If, as a group, if there's consensus here about what we want it to say. And I think there is, but I just think we're not comfortable yet with the actual words. So that's where I am, is I don't want to complicate the process, but I also don't want to
Catherine, can you,
wordsmith.
if we need to pause, we can pause. If you want to have suggestion for the clarifying the wording so that we are honoring the intention and the direction of the committee, but we can still move forward in just having that little bit of clarity added.
I think I can do it now. If you,
Sure.
So the sections would be the same. So I'm just going to read one of them, okay?
F and J.
So when a property is connected to the city's water system, so we put is connected in that first phrase.
Are we on F or G? Or J?
It doesn't matter, F, just say, because
Okay.
they're the same.
Okay.
The property owner is required to disconnect from any existing private water well, and then we can say, subject to the conditions herein, or subject to the exceptions herein, to kind of link the sentences. And then however, the owner may continue to utilize a new or existing well for non-potable uses, so long as such use is authorized by a valid well permit and there is no cross connection between the well system and the city's water system.
Does that work, Travis?
It does, but I just would refer back to my previous point that if a well system would be used for potable water elsewhere in the property, that would kind of, in effect, prohibit that. Sorry.
Could we, Madam Mayor.
I think the non-domestic probably did that too.
But
Yeah,
there-
that's fair.
There's no cross-connection. So you can have a potable well as long as there's not a cross-connection. That's what I
Yeah.
believe our language says.
Would you agree with that being okay under the new? Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's the key here, no cross connection.
No cross-connection, that's what we're trying to fix. Yeah, I'm good with that.
I'm not sure that the way that the sentence is constructed, it does actually allow you to have a potable water system that is, or a potable water well that is still connected. Not cross-connected, but that is still used in an outbuilding.
Oh, if we say non-potable water, I see,
Yeah, because it's an and.
yeah.
Couldn't we just say something specific about the property that we're talking? The property that's served by city water should not have any connection to any wells, period. Couldn't we say
Whatsoever.
something like?
No cross
Right,
connections
I'm talking about the
anywhere,
actual
anyhow.
domicile, or whatever word we want to use for the property, and I can't do it.
Can I make a suggestion
Yes.
then? Okay, so starting with the second sentence. However, the owner may continue to utilize a new or existing well for non-potable use so long as such use is authorized by a valid well permit, comma, there is no cross-connection between the well system and the city's water system. And if the well is used for potable use, it is not used in a building that is connected to the city's water system. That is not as eloquent as I would like it to be, but something like that.
Yeah.
I think this is complicated enough that I would rather read it and ensure, I would rather not draft city ordinances on the fly. We will have a second reading, but.
It'll come back to us in a second reading with those amendments made into it.
Understanding the concern about the water committee, we'll learn as we go. We'll do it better next time.
Well, and I would like to point out that generally we don't have council at the water committee meeting. I don't know the process if we can or not, but generally we don't. So I don't know if discussing specific ordinance language, when an attorney should be present, if that's the best venue for that or not.
Well, the other way to say that is the water committee was fully supportive of no cross connections. Period.
Okay.
All right, so Catherine, can you say that one more time so that if someone wishes to make a motion, they can say, I so move to adopt this on first reading with the amendments stated by.
I'm trying to type it out to make a little bit more sense. Okay. So, all right. When a property is connected to the city's water system, the property owner is required to disconnect from any existing private water well, subject to the exceptions herein. However, the owner may continue to utilize a new or existing well for non-potable use so long as such use is authorized by a valid well permit and there is no cross-connection between the well system and the city's water system. And I think I'm going to suggest a separate sentence. If the well continues to be used as a potable source on the property, the well cannot be used in connection with a building that is connected to the city's water system. It needs a little tweaking, but it's close.
All right, is
To
there
the
a
point.
motion to amend this resolution as stated by our city attorney?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
He had to step away.
Okay. Councilmember Schmisher?
Aye.
B. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Okay. We, you know what? We do learn, right? It is a process of learning, and we get better every time. So this is new for us, and we appreciate it, and we're making steps in the right direction. So thank you for your work. And thank you, Catherine, for the new language on the fly.
Sure.
We still have more business to do. So, wow,
This is the hard one.
This is a tough one. This is item F. Introduction and first reading by title only of Ordinance 15, Series of 2023, entitled, "An Ordinance Increasing the Base Rate Used to Calculate Stormwater Management Fees Chargeable by the City Stormwater Utility Enterprise." Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. As we do every year, we take a look at our stormwater rates. We evaluate and look back at our previous rate study. And this year, we are proposing a 5% inflationary increase. And I will let, I think Tammy worked on the actual calculation because there is a formula that we have to follow. And I'll let her talk about that.
So when we calculated the rate, we determined that we needed to go ahead and continue with an inflationary rate. The charter, I think it is in the charter, requires us to calculate every year what our rate needs to be. Our existing rate would essentially meet the minimum needs of the stormwater utility. But we also need to look to the future and continue to increase the reserves so we can do additional projects. And that is why we are recommending the 5% inflationary rate. We did an inflationary rate for 2023, and so we would like to continue with a inflationary rate for 2024.
So we're just looking at inflation.
Correct.
Any questions or comments from council? I know it's tough. Ryan?
Yeah, I just want to point out when Tammy says we need to look to the future, we have 2A projects. We've been focused on arterials and collectors. There is stormwater work that needs to be done in those funds. Looking at inflationary so we can at least keep pace and continue to build some small reserves into that fund for some of those future projects is a key component to consider.
Yeah, I was here, I don't know how many years it had been sent. I don't know if there had ever been an increase to the stormwater. And they were so far behind, they were so lacking that we had to make a really big jump just to take care of some basic things, including being able to keep up with our MS4 permit to adhere to the EPA regulations so we wouldn't be subject to thousands of dollars of fees, penalties.
Fines.
Fines, yeah, fines.
And if I can add on,
Taxpayer dollar fines.
That was rough to do that. And so we kind of decided it's better just to do a little bit, just to keep up every single year.
Nobody likes nobody likes any increases, but stormwater is our newest department and it's our smallest department, and without it, it costs us a lot of money.
And at the time you were talking about, the general fund was subsidizing the stormwater fund, and that's what we don't want to happen. It needs to pay for itself, and for the water department needs.
All right, well, that was some good discussion. Is there a motion?
Could I ask a question
Sure,
first?
absolutely.
So we've got three proposals in front of us, 5%, 9%, and 14%. Is that right? Am I on the wrong place?
Yeah, so for stormwater, we just proposed the 5% increase.
Next one's the water one, John.
Thank you.
I'm confused too. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just the stormwater. The next topic will be the water rates.
Okay.
Page 148, John.
Thank you.
Okay. So we still need to take a vote on this.
Madam Mayor and Council, I move to approve ordinance number 15, series of 2023.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Councilmember Tracy?
That was just for the motion.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
Sorry.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll call a vote.
Councilmember Schmisher,
Aye.
D. Smith,
Aye.
Stein,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Worthington,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye.
Okay, well, lots of bigger picture decisions having to be made tonight. Thank you, council. It's never easy. Water rates will be another one of those. It's going to be a tough one, and that's the introduction and first reading by title only of Ordinance 16, series of 2023, concerning water rates.
And we'll pass the time over to Water Superintendent Travis Payne.
Thank you. So included in this packet are options for a 5%, a 9%, and a 14% rate increase. These options were discussed at the 927 Water Committee meeting. Originally, a 5% and a 9% option were presented, but after committee review, it was agreed that a 14% option should be presented. The 5% option represents an inflationary increase. The 9% option represents an increase as provided for the 2017 rate study. And the 14% increase represents a larger increase to combine both an inflationary and a 9% increase. So included in my memo was kind of a breakdown of what water increases have been approved throughout the years. And a reminder of the 2017 rate study did call out a 9% rate increase for the years 2018 through 2022. Also included in the materials is a bill comparison for all three rates with a 10,000 gallon water bill. If that is an average water bill, it usually is between a 10 and 11,000 gallon bill. And then we did a rate comparison with surrounding communities to kind of give you guys an idea of where we fall as far as rates go for a 10,000 gallon water bill. Another thing that I kind of wanted to point out, so in the 2024 budget, our O&M kind of comes up to $6.1 million in spending. In new capital spending, so not funds that have been rolled over or grant funding, that is $1.7 million for a total of $7.8 million in new spending budgeted for 2024. Our budget revenue is $7.6 million, so that does leave a shortfall of $200,000 that we generally do make up either additional revenues over budgeted or money saved from the year prior. I think it's kind of important to point out that's a shortfall that's not adding anything to our coffers. That's a shortfall in capital spending. Of that capital spending, $500,000 is for distribution infrastructure upgrades. So we went through and we identified all the cast iron water mains in the town, as well as undersized asbestos cement mains. So those are priorities 1 and 2 for replacement. For cast iron replacements, we identified 83,799 linear feet of water main. So at that $500,000 replacement at the current benchmark of what it costs to replace our linear foot, that would be a 50-year replacement just to get all the cast iron out of our water system. For the asbestos cement undersized mains, we have 146,956 linear feet. That's 88 years for replacement. Now, there's no expectation that all this should be replaced within 5 or even 10 years, but certainly a 138-year replacement probably is outside the bounds of what we should be trying to accomplish. So I thought that was really important to bring up in what we're asking for a rate increase. It's not for O&M budgets. It really is capital spending that we're trying to increase. We're trying to increase the ability to replace our aged water mains. So with that, I'll take any questions. Sorry, one more thing to point out. We will have a few more materials after this discussion to talk about the city water rates, so I didn't want anybody to think that was going by the wayside.
Gotcha. Councilmember Stein?
Travis, I wonder if, I know you've had a lot of increases in the chemicals that we have to use to treat the water. Could you speak to that, what it is overall, and have those prices settled down, or are they still going up? Thanks.
Those prices have stabilized quite a lot. We're not seeing the drastic price increases that we were seeing last year, 2 years ago. They generally seem to be following inflationary increases now.
I think that's an important thing to say, because we talk about, the increase in, property taxes, which is really, it's a burden that we all are going to have to bear across Canyon City, but it's also a burden, like even just the carbon to filter the water, like post-COVID, that tripled in cost. I'm imagining that sounds like it's stabilized, but it hasn't gone down. Like our costs have gone up dramatically as well, just to provide basic services.
Yeah, it really has.
Like drinking water.
For the media replacement for next year, we have the $550,000 budgeted. That's just for 6. Unfortunately, that would have covered all 12 filters pretty easily 3 years ago.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you so much for that presentation and kind of all of those details about what the needs are and what some of the shortfalls and gaps are. I was wondering if you could also tell us how much does it cost the city 1,000 gallons of water?
Yeah, to treat and to distribute the water, we came up with $3.67 per 1,000 gallons. That represents actual budget expenditures in 2022 versus gallons diverted from the river in 2022. So that's kind of last year. We have a full year's worth of data.
I think that's a really important number to keep in mind, because at our current rate levels and even at some of the proposed rate levels, we aren't covering those costs, particularly not for golf courses and not for the city water rates. So I completely 100% understand the need to increase water rates to cover the cost of inflation and to make sure that we can have safe drinking water for the people. But while we are repeatedly increasing those water rates for the people of Canyon City, we're at the same time asking them to subsidize the costs for city water and for golf course water. And I don't think that's appropriate. So I'm really excited to hear about what the additional materials are that you guys are working on with regard to city water rates. Because we do that full cost allocation plan, and I know Director Nordyke spends a lot of time making sure that those I's are dotted and T's are crossed to ensure that the water department is appropriately paying the city for the costs that the city is covering on behalf of the water department. However, at the same time, we're not asking the city to pay the costs for the water that they use. So I'm excited to hear about the additional materials. Thanks.
Yeah, as you stated, this is a subject that is going to be tackled and thoroughly studied so we can have further conversations. Councilmember Worthington.
I'm curious to know what the thought process was in the Water Committee coming up with a potential 14% increase, knowing that it's probably needed, but what was their justification for suggesting that?
Probably to make us feel better about the 5.
Yeah, or the 9.
Or the 9, yeah.
I think the thinking was that the study recommended 9% increases without inflation, and that if you added inflation, it would be 14%.
Travis, do you have those other materials?
Yes. Brandon, could you bring up those slides, please? So we ran the model in a couple of different ways, and those are the numbers you see before you. The top column represents bringing all the parks into non-residential inside rates, and the second column, the larger column, is establishing those rates based on location. So the major change that you see there is Lakeside Cemetery. If Lakeside Cemetery was built at outside non-residential rates, that would largely be the difference that you see. There are a few smaller accounts, but I mean that is the vast majority of what you see. And as noted, those estimates are based on the average consumption of those accounts over 3 years, 2020 through 2022. So you never know what consumption is going to be for the next year, but all you can use is averages from previous years. So the reason why we decided to present both ways is it could be a less jolting way of doing this. If we just went non-res across the board, you see it's it's a lesser impact to those other funds.
And the figures would need to be added to the existing budget in the Parks Fund. So we just wanted, and that was the fund that was impacted the most. So we wanted to make sure just to highlight that to council as well.
You want to go next slide?
Yeah. Is it turned on? So then, we wanted to show if the increases if we moved the water rate for primarily the Parks Department from the golf course city rate to the non-residential, what it also does to our reserves. When you look at increasing the expenses without having any additional revenue going into that fund, it actually puts us below what our reserve policy says we should have in the Parks Improvement Fund. You can, if we were to offset some of that with the bridge revenue, the lease from the bridge, we could maintain that 20%. But the issue then is that it impacts how much of the bridge revenue goes into general fund. So those are just some of the items that we wanted to, make council aware of. The 2024 budget that was adopted did have the city rates for general fund, water enterprise fund, and stormwater enterprise fund at the non-residential rates. We were able to incorporate those in, but because there was such a huge impact to the Parks Improvement Fund, we felt that it was important to highlight that to City Council and have it more so as a discussion point.
Is this something that we need to make a decision on tonight? Or is this just something that we are going to be studying further on with the professionals as we do a more in-depth
This is,
investigation?
this has been, having this information presented has been a request of Councilmember Schmischer. And I think for, as Director Nordick said, this is a discussion point, and if you want to do something tonight, we would need to know. So if there are going to be budget impacts, we can bring those forward at the December meeting, and we would have to do an additional public hearing and make sure that we notice that appropriately and all those types of things.
Are you talking about an additional public hearing for the budget?
Yeah, we would do it that same night. So I guess we just need direction from council if, do you want to move the city's water rate to a non-residential rate this year, or, do you want to wait and see what the rate study and the water master plan says, or, some other option?
All right, well, council, we need to hear from you. It looks like we have Councilmember Schmischer and then Tracy in the queue.
Oh, I think mine is a holdover. Thank you.
Councilmember Tracy.
Yeah, I would prefer to see what comes from the water master plan process next year, because that is certainly one of the things that will be looked at in that planning process is rates and how they break out. I guess I just don't feel comfortable trying to make that change right now as we're crunching through budget time. So that's, I would just rather wait until next year, or during that process next year.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, this is actually almost a philosophical discussion, because the city is where it is in its tax structure and spending structure based on the city's water rates that we've been paying. What that means is that water users have been subsidizing the Parks Department, not via a tax, but by a hidden fee, essentially, is what we've got, what the current situation is now. Is that if we decided that was philosophically not acceptable, we also have to look then at either reducing services somewhere else to pay for the loss of the fee, so to speak, or raise taxes. And so it's a hard question, because we have a practicality. The water rate is, however the city pays for water it uses, the city doesn't pay for it, the taxpayer does. And whether it's a hidden fee or a direct tax is kind of what we're struggling with, at least in my view. So it's complicated, and I think that it deserves perhaps a more analysis than what we have right now to really decide, because if we don't have the fee, you know, that does have an impact on the quality of life of citizens, because some spending has to be reduced somewhere, or we dip further into reserves, which I don't think we want to do. So it's a complicated question, and I don't know that I have an answer, but sometimes it helps to kind of help define it.
Councilmember Stein.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The minute you say philosophical, you're talking about individuals and how they feel about this. And I've seen this play out in Boulders Parks, and what they have had to do, because they're in a partially desert kind of climate too, is that when you go to one of their parks, you pay for parking. You can't mountain bike or hike their parks without paying a parking fee. And they have these automated parking things. There may be other fees that we might have to associate with parks. So I think this is something that I think definitely we need citizen input about. What do you want to pay less for water, but then eventually down the road we'll have to charge you fees? Do we have to charge you to play pickleball? Do we have to charge for parking? And, you know, we have to look at ourselves. We're not a static small town. We're constantly changing and growing. And these are things that we have to face now. We can't just wait and say, well, let this thing evolve. I think we need the people who live here have got to tell us how they want us to do, because the money's not there, because water is a very scarce commodity in the West, and everything about water production, water purification is becoming more expensive. Who knows what it'll be in 5 or 6 years? So this is something that it costs money for water, and it costs money to keep our parks green. We're in a semi-arid area of Colorado. If we don't use that water, we're going to have to xeriscape our parks. Do they want us to do that? Maybe. I don't know. But that's something we need to ask. We need to ask the voters. Thank you.
Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to point out the numbers. Even if we pass the 9%, the middle option tonight, the city and the golf course rate per 1,000 gallons would still be $2.58. Whereas the cost to treat and distribute 1,000 gallons of water is $3.67. So we are not meeting the minimum, like we're not even close to meeting the minimum. I do think that if memory serves, the last water rate study that we did in 2017 did call for the city and the golf courses to be treated not as special cases, but for those rates to be raised to the same level. And that was not, there were increases that were done in 2018, pretty substantial, but they still are nowhere near the level that was recommended in that 2017 rate study. So I think that, like, yes, we can push this off for yet another year, but this is the third year that I have sat through this conversation, and I'm tired of the city, of the people of the city subsidizing the city's water and the golf course water in a, as Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick said, in a hidden fee. Like, I think it's absolutely absurd that we do a full cost allocation plan to ensure that the water department is paying the city, but we don't do the same in reverse. Like, that does not make sense to me in any way whatsoever. I do think that there are ways that it could be phased in. You know, maybe you do the non-residential inside rate. It sounds like, if I understood you correctly, City Administrator Stevens, that's all, you've already built that into the 2024 budget for not the Parks Department, but essentially everybody else. So they already are, the city has already built some of this in. So I do think we could do it in a phased approach, and I do think we could do it slowly. I would be interested to hear from Director Nordyke what would be your recommendations for what would be cut from the budget if we did do it for the Parks Department as well. Thanks.
We would have to speak with Rex Brady with Parks, also with Leo Evans and Administrator Stevens, to actually determine what would need to happen, where we'd need to reduce either anywhere from $60,000 to $136,000, you know, depending on which way council chooses to go. The other option is that we reduce the amount of bridge revenue going to general fund and increase it going to parks. More and more of the bridge revenue is going to fund the parks. And the bridge revenue is to be used for funding parks, our quality of life fund, and also to go into general fund. So when you are putting more of it towards our parks department, you are essentially reducing other areas that could be funded. You know, we use the bridge revenues to be grant matches in the quality of life. So when we are getting those grants for Highway 50 improvements or, you know, Main Street improvements, whatever it may be, we have less of those funds available. The other option is to look at ways to increase the revenue. You know, maybe it isn't always about cutting what they have, you know, because it is a smaller department that does do a lot with the budget they have. There could be areas where we can charge additional fees. You know, as Councilor Stein mentioned, in Boulder, they have fees for parking. They have fees for using different facilities and the amenities. That may be something that the city has to look at, you know, and have new fees put in place to help cover the costs of our parks.
Unfortunately, the Parks Department doesn't get a whole lot of, they don't have a multitude of revenue streams. It's primarily all comes from the Royal Gorge Bridge. As Director Nordyke stated, you know, we could look at park use permits for the use of pavilions and things like that. The rec district recently went to that a couple years ago. We could put together some revenue projections based off of what that would look like.
So there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to discuss, and I think an important question to ask about these slides and these propositions is a question that's been asked before tonight, And that, has this been presented to the Water Committee? Because absolutely the Water Committee needs to be involved in these discussions as well. If we've already budgeted to be able to handle the non-residential inside for 2024, then I feel like that's a good compromise and a movement forward, a good measure to say we're serious about this, we're making movement forward, and then we can keep those discussions alive for where we go from there.
And I just want to be clear, are you saying for the city buildings but not the parks?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but if we already have that accounted for, that makes sense. It's our parks that will make have the biggest impact. And you're right. I have people from Colorado Springs will be like, wow, you guys actually have green grass. Ours died years ago for their parks that they have. We're really lucky to have such pristine parks that we were able to give to this public to use. And that was also in one of the citizen surveys. They love our parks that we have. So I'm okay with non-residential inside only. I don't know, the council needs to decide for yourselves by vote, but we also need to make a decision for that 5%, 9%, or 14%. What was the recommendation from the committee? Can you remind me, did they have a specific one that they, no?
They did not.
Do you have a specific one? Well, okay, I already know what you're gonna say. I can tell by the look at your face. Always would probably want to get the maximum for your committee. Councilmember Tracy?
Well, I'll make an attempt here and tell me what I miss. I think if I understand our packet correctly, we have 3 separate ordinances. One is at the 5% increase level, one at 9%, one at 14%, with the current rate structure, so to speak.
That is correct.
I would move that we adopt the 14% increase on this ordinance number 16, series of 2023. Just recognizing that overall we do need this kind of revenue for our enterprise fund, the water fund. It has to stand alone in its own way, so that's my motion.
Is there a second on this motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so we had I think the first second came from Andrea Stein. There's been a motion and a second, and I think we better have some discussion. That's a big number. That would be the biggest hike we've done in a year when there's a lot of hyperinflation and tax increases. Councilmember Schmischer.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that that's too large of a hike. I think what the city originally recommended was 5% or 9%. 9% is in line with the last water rate study that we had done. And I would be much more comfortable with the 9% approach. I think in a year where we have a lot of things that are increasing on folks, I would hate for water to be something that they can't bear. I think if I'm understanding Superintendent Payne correctly, that the 9% increase would provide sufficient funding to the water department. So I don't necessarily know that I think we need to be as drastic as a 14% increase would take us.
Any further discussion? All right, then we'll call a vote. Just want to reiterate that depending on your feelings, for 14% versus a 9%, if a 14% fails, we can go back and vote again for a different percentage. So Cindy, if you're still there, let's do a vote, see where we stand.
Councilmember Schmischer?
Nay.
Councilmember B. Smith?
Nay.
Councilmember Stein?
Aye.
Councilmember Tracy?
Aye.
Councilmember Worthington?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Nay.
And Tim Dennehy just got on. I don't know if you're here for enough of the discussion or the motion. Did you want to change?
Yes, I could hear it. Unfortunately, just for some things happening at the house right now, but I did hear the discussion and I am a nay.
Okay, so the motion for 14% has failed. I think we could take another motion to try and attempt for a different number. Absolutely, we can also have questions and discussion, yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, in the 2024 budget, what percentage increase was budgeted for the city buildings for non-residential inside? Was it 5% or 9%?
For the buildings, I did build in worst-case scenario, and it was not as, it wasn't as large of impact because we already had funds built in and had been increasing it every year. So to go additional, it wasn't as large of impact.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Director Nordick.
Okay, Council.
Madam Mayor?
Well, actually, Councilmember Worthington, she punched her button.
Yeah. I make a motion that we approve the 9% option of Ordinance 16, Series of 2023 on first reading.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. I just want a clarification that no matter, if this passes, do we need to include a vote on the non-residential inside rate for
That'd be a separate motion.
increasing that for the city?
Separate motion would be cleaner.
Well, but didn't you do that in your budget? Yeah.
So it is, that's already taken care of.
Yeah, so you basically made that choice.
We already, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Because we
you're
were
fine.
having this big conversation. Okay,
Yeah.
so right now we have a motion and a second for a 9%
Well,
increase.
could I just make?
Yes.
Just to make sure that the city rate is a completely different rate structure in the ordinance. And I think to amend what we charge, I think that section would need to be amended. So that is, sorry,
Schedule L.
thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that with that information that would not need to be changed.
So Tammy, you did a 14% already that was approved?
I did, but with our utilities, we typically do not allow for those funds to be moved to cover budget shortfalls in other areas. So for the general fund, I think it was a $5,000 impact. And then the stormwater fund, it was a $500 impact. So the significance, the additional change to those budgets was not huge.
At the end of the day, they pay what they're actually charged for what they're using at the end of the day.
Correct. And
yeah.
yeah, and the departments cannot request that money be used for something else.
So Travis, are you saying that you feel like there does need to be more clarification?
I think there does. So, okay, so Schedule L is the city rate in your ordinance. And right now it lists, so this is the water delivered by the water department to any park, cemetery, green space, public building or public facility or public grounds owned, operated, maintained by the city. So if you're gonna apply the inside, please correct, inside non-residential rate to public buildings and public facilities, those two terms need to be deleted from Schedule L. Well, I think the addition is through the budget. Am I speaking correctly when I say that?
Yeah, I think the accounts would just naturally go to an inside non-res then if it's not defined as anything else.
I agree.
Sorry, I'm just reading this really quickly. I apologize. Or you could add those terms to Schedule E, just for clarity, consistency. So after it says a non-residential unit, and then it has in parentheses and/or other permitted accessory use or structure in any public building or facility. That's to E.
All right, so can you say that all over again so that if our person who made the motion wants to amend it accordingly, we can do that?
Sure. So,
And I'm going to say what she said.
so I guess a friendly amendment suggestion to the motion would be to delete the terms public building and public facility from Schedule A, or from Schedule L, which is the city rate, and add those phrases to Schedule E, which is the inside non-residential rate, after the language which is in parentheses regarding structure or use. Is that, okay.
Okay. Basically, the portion of, I amend the motion by stating that we need to move portions of Schedule L to Schedule E, and with the wording that Attorney Catherine mentioned. Will that work?
Mm-hmm. And then our seconder needs to do that, second it again.
Oh, re-second.
Second. So there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, I'm going to call a vote.
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
E. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
All right. Council, we took care of a lot of business tonight, and I really appreciate you and the bigger vision you have for Canyon City and the time and effort you've put into your research and making sure that we do what's best for our town. We still do have business to take care of, though, but this time it's in executive session. I'll turn the time over to John Hamrick to read that motion.
I have a motion that I move that the city enter into executive sessions for the following purposes. Executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations, and/or instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024E regarding acquisition of property by the city, and to consider personnel matters pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024F and not involving any specific employees who have requested discussion of the matter in open session, specifically for the city attorney performance review.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call vote.
Councilmember Dennehy? There. Schmisher?
Aye.
B. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.